chair of this committee. Before we start, I just have a few announcements to make about the meeting itself. The meeting is being streamed live to Southwark Council's YouTube channel, which you can watch at your leisure in the future. Bearing in mind that this meeting will be streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, if you are planning to speak at this meeting, you may choose to switch off your camera so that only your voice will be heard. Members of the public who are disconnected from the meeting due to technical difficulties should use the link or dial-in instructions they were sent initially to return to the meeting. If a member of the committee or officer loses connection, can they please inform Fitzroy Williams or Everton Roberts of this via email or Microsoft Teams immediately, so that we can adjourn the meeting until the connection has been restored. Members of the public are welcome to record, screenshot, or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. A copy of the Council's protocol for reporting and filming is available on the Council website. In the interests of health and safety and my own sanity, we will be taking a 5 to 10 minute comfort break at the end of each hour or thereabouts. To ensure that this virtual meeting runs smoothly, only one individual should speak at any time. I need to underline that. Any person speaking must be permitted to finish what they are saying without interruption. However, if a request that an individual stops speaking, they should, if requested, this is not get my teeth in, sorry. If I request that an individual stops speaking, they should do so immediately, please. If a member of the committee wishes to speak, please indicate via the chat function if that facility isn't available to you. Please wait until I've called you before unmuting your microphone. Now then, moving on to the agenda itself. You should have all seen the main agenda, and we have two supplemental agendas covering the minutes of meetings outstanding from June. So I know this is something that a lot of you have been looking forward to. So they're contained on supplemental agendas 1 and 2, and we'll get to them in due course. So the first item on the agenda is apologies. I've received no apologies. Oh, is Humera waving at me?
Yeah, sorry, the chat function is disabled.
Ah. Whose brains and skills can we
well, sorry, my chat function is disabled. Everyone else's might not be, I don't know.
No, mine is as well. You're absolutely right. I was keeping my fingers
crossed to look into it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Well, I guess you're going to have to wave your hands in the boxes then for the time being until the chat is back with us if you wish to speak. Sorry about that. Okay, I presume there's no other apologies. I know Martin's with us as one of the co-opted people. Okay, and yeah, I don't think. Okay, so I'm just going to confirm the voting members now. So if you could indicate you're present by calling out your full name, which ward you're from, and your party, please. So I'll do it in alphabetical order. I've already introduced myself, but can we start with Humera, please?
Councillor Humera Ali, London Bridge and West Bermondsey ward, the Liberal Democrat.
Thank you. Peter, please.
Hi, Chair. Councillor Peter Bavudu, Rye Lane ward, Labour.
Thank you very much. Jack, please.
Councillor Jack Buck, Faraday ward, Labour.
Thank you. Victor, please.
I'm Victor Chamberlain. I'm Vice Chair of the committee, and I'm also a Lib Dem councillor for Borough and Bankside.
Thank you very much. Gavin, please.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Gavin Edwards, councillor for Nunhead and Queens Road ward and Labour councillor.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Sarah King, Champion Hill ward, and I'm a Labour councillor.
Thank you. Jason, please.
Councillor Jason Ottrey,
Councillor for St Giles Ward, Labour.
Thank you. Victoria, please.
Hi, good evening. Councillor Victoria Lisa, Goose Green Ward, Labour.
Thank you. Jane, please.
Councillor Jane Salmon, Surrey Docks Ward, Liberal Democrat.
Thank you. And Leanne.
I'm Leanne Werner. I'm a Labour councillor and I represent South Bermondsey Ward.
Thank you. And Martin, are you audible? Is he there? Has he gone again?
Oh, he's gone.
He's gone. Oh, well, that was quick of him. Okay, fair enough. Well, if he comes back again, then it's Martin Bracknell, who's one of our co-opted members. I don't think Lynette Murphy O'Dwyer's here, is she? No. Okay. Good. Right. Item 2 is notification of any other items of business which the chair deems urgent. There's no additional late items. I've already referred to the supplemental agendas. So moving on to item 3, which is disclosure of interests and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare an interest or dispensation this evening? No, thank you very much. Okay, now then, we've got the mammoth task of agreeing on minutes, which have been outstanding for some time. Can I refer you first of all, I know some of you got very good memories and better than mine, I dare say, but the first lot of minutes are from the 7th of May. So does anybody wish to raise anything on these minutes, or can we agree them, please?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Okay, and now we're moving on to the 12th of May, please. Has anybody got anything to raise, or are we happy with those minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And now let's move on to the 2nd of June, please.
Agreed.
Everybody happy with those? Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, and the next lot is the 22nd of July. Everybody happy with those?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, we have the 15th of October. Is everybody happy with those?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Great, thanks. So we're up to date with our minutes, you'll be glad to hear. Okay, so item 5.
Chair, you didn't approve the 16th of September.
Sorry?
You didn't approve the 16th of September minutes.
Because it's not written on my list. That's
unless
why.
we've already done
I
those.
think we might have done that one already, if memory serves.
Yeah, I think we did do that, didn't we? Everton?
That was done at the last meeting, Chair.
Thank you.
Oh, good. I was just keeping your toes, Chair.
I'm always on my toes and fingers. Don't worry about that. Okay, so let's move on to item 5, please. It's my great pleasure to introduce our new leader of the council, Councillor Kieran Williams, and we're very grateful that he's come along this evening, and we're looking forward to an enjoyable interview with you, Kieran. You're not under the spotlight just yet, you'll be glad to hear. I know that a few members have already indicated that they would like you to cover, the areas of the sort of key challenges that you see that are facing the council at the moment. I know some members are interested about our involvement with our sister authorities at the Pan-London level and the GLA, and obviously talking more specifically about the effect of COVID on the council's income and potential settlement that we may get from central government. I also believe that you're quite happy to comment on the 2 items that we have on the agenda, also following the refresh of the council plan, and the performance statistics report that we have, because obviously this falls under your purview. And I think if you wanted to comment on that within your talk, then please feel free to do so. And I think the climate emergency, was another issue that one of our members had raised. So I'm sorry for that lengthy introduction, Kieran. I've probably taken up most of your time now, but if you'd like to just say a few words, we'd be most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that introduction. I think you've given me plenty to cover there. I want to start by saying a couple of things. So one is, this is clearly the most difficult year that I think we've all had to live through in a generation. And so for me, taking over at this point is genuinely daunting. And I have to say, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who's offered their support in this period. I've got an excellent, strong cabinet around me who've been fantastic. We have an amazing workforce across our council, and our partners, I have to say, without exception, have been incredibly positive and generous in their offers of support for not just me in this role, but for our borough more generally, for the people of our borough. And I think if we have to start somewhere in dealing with the situation we're in, Southwark is in a remarkably good place to do so. I want to say a little bit about the challenges we face, as you said, and also our ambition for the coming years. As you can see from your agenda, we've just gone through the process of refreshing our council plan, and that's due to come to Council Assembly in a few weeks' time to be agreed. And that process we entered into at the beginning of the summer in order to make sure we had the right priorities for the context we're in now, post-COVID, and also to think through the priorities that have also moved up our agenda over the course of the year. And for me, coming into this role, at the core of that has to be our continued focus on reducing inequality in our borough. I think this pandemic has made us all even more aware of the depth of inequality in Southwark and in our country more broadly, and how profound that impact has been, and how COVID has played on the vulnerabilities that people already have in our community. The disadvantages that people experience throughout their life has made them all the more vulnerable to this deadly disease, and has reminded us all of how much more we need to do. It's also sharpened those inequalities, and we know that many more people in our borough are struggling to get by day to day. So coming into this role, I want to make sure that our council continues to be focused with our partners on narrowing that gap, ensuring those who are experiencing the most difficulty in their lives continue to see their lives improve more quickly than those who are more privileged, if you like. But there are some, of course, practical priorities to start with, and top of the list has to be COVID. We find ourselves in another very difficult period for everyone in the borough of national restrictions affecting on our residents here. We've got some very good news stories to say in Southwark. We have taken up contact tracing locally, and we've gone from the failing 60% of contacts that the national system's been reaching to 85% in contacts in Southwark as a result of our local system. The increase in infections that we had seen seems to be stabilising at the moment, and I hope will start to come down as a result both of our local efforts and of the restrictions that are now in place. There was a question about partnerships across London, which I shall come back to, but on COVID they are incredibly strong. Councils across London are meeting on a weekly basis, leaders across London. I've just come from the weekly meeting with leaders, and we have committed consistently to move as one across London to address this as a shared issue. And that means moving as one in terms of increasing or decreasing restrictions across the whole of our city, but it also means moving as one in terms of putting pressure on government for the support our residents and our businesses need locally. And I think that's been an effective use of London Council's collaboration. But of course, COVID is not the only challenge facing us. We face a climate emergency, and that is, as people will know, a clear priority for this council. We've set out our commitment to do everything we can to get Southwark to be a carbon neutral borough by 2030. Councillor Johnson-Sittu will be bringing forward the work on our new climate emergency strategy over the coming weeks. And at the core of that is the starting point is our own commitment as a council to get our emissions down by half by 2022, and then to do the practical things we can do quickly, rolling out a wide range of measures to reduce carbon emissions through transport in the borough, from school streets through to more bike hangers, through to a long-term commitment to switch over our roads to zero carbon uses and away from polluting vehicles, and to put in place measures to disincentivise those polluting vehicles, as well as action to improve our own council stocks, housing stocks, carbon emissions, and to make sure that we have in Southwark the highest target, a higher target than government for new development as well. I could go on, planting 10,000 new trees as well, a really important part of that. Of course, we need to get our economy back up to full strength, and it worries me deeply how many people are now finding themselves out of work, struggling financially, not sure if their job's going to be there next year and the year beyond. Our commitment to be a full employment borough continues to get 5,000 people into work by the end of this term in 2022. And as part of that, to create 1,000 green jobs as well. We will be launching in a few weeks' time a particular campaign to make sure that young people in our borough, who are perhaps certainly being hit hardest at the moment, have real chances to connect with job opportunities in this incredibly difficult year for them. We know the housing crisis in Southwark is long-standing. We are continuing to build council homes and have throughout this year, and that will continue to be a clear priority for us, delivering on our long-term ambitions, but not just council homes, ensuring that new developments deliver their share. We've made sure that all major schemes in the borough over the last 2 years have complied with our planning policies of delivering at least 35%, and we'll continue to push for more than that, 40% in some cases we're achieving. We want to have a real focus on the wider aspects of health in our borough. COVID has clearly been what's dominated the health discussion over recent years, but it's also shone a light on the deeper health inequalities in Southwark, and particularly those experienced by our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, which will be a clear priority in our council plan going forwards. In renewing the council plan, we've really focused in on the things that matter at this time, getting our town centres going again, helping people back into work, tackling COVID itself, but also getting our cultural industries back to life again with a new nighttime economy plan for Southwark. It's going to be hard work, and we are, as I say, we start from a strong position in Southwark, but we will build up from there and get back to something that is better than we were in before we entered this pandemic. I'm sure we will, and I know we can with all the opportunity we have in our borough. But I will be calling on all of our partners to play an active role in that, and particularly the big institutions that I've been meeting in the borough, be they our hospitals, universities, major employers, to work with us to look at how together we can deliver that change, and equally to work in each of our individual neighbourhoods in our borough to make sure that we deliver for them at the other end of the spectrum. So whether that be Bermondsey or Rotherhithe or Camberwell or Peckham, as a council we'll work to have a clear plan for each part of our borough to deliver. We'll have to do that in very challenging circumstances. The question was asked about the budget. This year, despite the government's commitment at the beginning of the year to back local authorities to do whatever it takes to get our communities through COVID, we still find ourselves £11 million short on our general fund at this point in the year on the money that we've lost as a result of COVID. Now, we are in a better financial position than many local authorities as a good result of managing our finances so well over the last decade, despite having over half of our budget taken away from us by the government through their cuts. But nonetheless, we will find a way to manage that through. For next year, we continue to look at what might be one of the most difficult budget settlements we've had for many years, despite the level of cuts we've experienced over the last decade. Sadly, we have no certainty on what that number is as of today. We're expecting the spending review in November, and we won't know until the end of December what our actual settlement is, and we're told that that will just be a one-year settlement again, which is clearly no way to plan the finances of a country or a major organisation like a council, but that's the place we're in. It looks like our planning is that we're planning for a £26 million reduction in funding next year that we'll work through. I hope that it's a better settlement than that. I hope that the government realise that now is not the time to be taking money out of communities and out of local authorities that have been so effective in stepping up to support their residents through this pandemic, and I hope they give governments give local government the funding we need to deliver for our communities and rebuild our economies and get people through this pandemic. But we won't know until the end of the year, and I know you'll have long sessions with us early in the new year to go through the budget proposals in detail. I think I should probably stop there and take your questions, but I guess the most important thing for me is I genuinely feel this year has been a real, there is so much we should celebrate about our response to this really difficult year, whether it be the work around the community hub that we've now moved on to form a community support alliance, bringing together our voluntary sector, NHS and council to support people who most need support in the borough, whether it be the work we did in Southwark leading the way and making sure that people get access to the PPE they should, really putting the pressure on to make sure that got to our care providers and all who needed it, whether it's been the work we've done going above and beyond offering support to businesses to get them through this period. We've managed to have a positive response that we're committed to continuing through this, through the rest of this pandemic, and to show that together we can achieve amazing things in our borough in Southwark, and I look forward to continuing to do that. I look forward to answering your questions as well.
That's great, Kieran. Thank you very much. That was very informative. I've got, as you can appreciate, quite a few members lined up already who'd like to ask you some questions. So without further ado, I've got Victor, first of all, please.
Thanks, Chair. I've got two questions, so I'll try and rattle through them quickly. Kieran, congratulations on your new role and welcome to Overview and Scrutiny. One of the things that I think stood out from what you just said was about the budget settlement and how serious that implication will be for our borough and how we're going to tackle the next few years and the challenges that we face. So I'm interested in what measures we're doing as a local authority to make the case to central government on our needs right now. And also perhaps if you could elaborate on what work you're doing alongside council leaders across London to actually make the case that London isn't forgotten, because we seem to have a prime minister that, you know, and a government that does seem to overlook London at every opportunity.
Thanks, Victor. I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to make this case strongly and we need to make it collectively. The voice of one council is not going to change the government settlement. The voice of many may do this. And I think it's really important to say that it is just as much Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem run councils that this year are looking at very difficult budget settlements, albeit I'd have to emphasise that Labour councils seem to have done much worse over the long term than the other parties have. But here we are together. So what have we done recently? Well, we've set out to the government and to the Chancellor very clearly the challenges that we face and the shortfall and the need for the government to fill it. And we set out that both in terms of the in-year shortfall in funding and the long-term funding we need to deliver for the people of Southwark. So I wrote to the Chancellor last week, the week before, setting out our concerns into the budget settlement, the spending review process. Across London as councils, we are setting a clear case together for the costs that we've incurred as a result of COVID. We're providing regular updates to the government on what those costs are and the full nature of them. Those costs, in all cases, I think, as far as to my knowledge, exceed the money that the government's provided across London. And we'll continue to make the case together that government must, as they promised at the beginning of the year, fully fund councils for the cost of delivering, especially since, and let's be clear about this, local government has consistently delivered during this pandemic the support we said we would and gone above and beyond. National government programmes that have had billions poured into them have consistently underperformed. And it seems grossly unfair and just counterproductive to put money into programmes that aren't delivering and not fully fund the ones that clearly are working for communities and which communities value and have needed. So in terms of longer term work on the budget settlement, there is a really good quality joint piece of work that's been done by the Local Government Association this year, where we got the Institute of Financial Studies to set out the financial challenges that councils face over the next coming years. I think it's a really well cross-party piece of work that sets out why councils need full funding, and whether that's for social care or emptying the bins, we need a proper budget settlement. And I think in that it's notable to say so much of the risk right now has been pushed onto councils the shift to councils funding our settlement less through government grant, more through business rates and council tax proportionately, has meant that when we've hit an economic downturn, automatically we end up with a lot less money than we would have done in the past. And that risk was a deliberate choice made over the last decade by the Tories that is playing out in the lives of people in our borough right now.
Thanks, Kieran. My second question is about transport policy, and transport is absolutely vital to tackling that inequality that you talked about across the borough. But we have seen some really significant investment over the last decade in transport. But we've also seen, the current mayor and TfL scrap the RV1, the only zero emission hydrogen bus in London, which was one of our council plan commitments to tackle. We don't have, the mayor has failed to deliver the Rotherhithe Canary Wharf Bridge. He's failed to include Bakerloo line as a priority in the next spending review requests. We still have an air quality scandal in most of Southwark. Our traffic is at levels that was the same as it was 10 years ago. So we have a long way to go to actually getting transport into a place where we are helping to use it to tackle those inequalities. And it just feels again and again that the mayor isn't prioritising Southwark. Across London.
Question, please. Get your question.
And so my question is: do you think that your administration will be listened to better by TfL and the mayor than the previous administrations?
Well, look, we can all agree that transport is a vital part of the solution for Southwark and our city, and improving it needs to continue. I think right now we are sadly in a situation where the government have chosen to completely play politics with the finances of TfL. And what's really clear in this pandemic, and you'll all have seen it in the headlines, is that London is the only major developed city in the world that has a transport system entirely funded through fares. And it's a system that's fundamentally broken and needs reform. And government input into funding that system is the way that all other major cities, whether they're New York or Paris or Madrid, make sure they have a system that fully works. And that's the challenge that London's facing just now. That said, I think the Mayor of London has done a remarkable job of bringing the deficit down that Boris left us with, moving away from the vanity projects that he implemented that harmed TfL's finances so much, be they the Garden Bridge or the cable car. But we face some real challenges, and absolutely for me, building the extension of the Bakerloo line is something that is part of the long-term vision for London, and we need to do collectively. That will need government investment. You'll know that we are playing our part, securing land on the Old Kent Road, buying it ourselves, making sure it's available for that development to happen in the future. On air quality, actually, the mayor's had a remarkable success record in bringing down air pollution in our city, but there's clearly much, much further to go. The ultra low emission zone will help with that profoundly, but that's only one part of a series of solutions we need. And we need a fundamental shift away from polluting vehicles in our city over a period of time. And as a council, we'll be playing our part, designating more of our roads to zero carbon uses, making sure that it is easier for people to walk and cycle, to store their bike next to their home, doubling the number of bike hangers in our borough over the next few years. By 2022, implementing more school streets and much more. But I think it's just such a challenging world, and I really hope that the government stops messing around in this arena and playing politics and threatening to get rid of free travel fares for children, when actually what we need is an investment in getting more people onto public transport as soon as COVID allows, of course, getting more people walking and cycling.
Great, thank you, Kieran. I've got Jane next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Kieran, and congratulations from me as well. I'm sorry, I'm going to carry on a little bit from what my colleague was talking about, because obviously Surrey Docks was where the bridge was going to be. Really saddened when we didn't get that. And then the Bakerloo seems to be, on hold potentially, or not there at all. Now, the worry is that we're all concerned about the environment, aren't we? We all agree with that. But the mayor has said that Silvertown can go on at a cost of £1 billion. And then it's been decided that it'll be £65 million a year to carry it on. Now, the Rotherhithe crossing and the Bakerloo to a certain extent, they wouldn't have caused that sort of level of pollution and everything else. Now, is this mayor with us or is he not? All local authorities are declaring a climate emergency. And how are you going to work with a mayor who goes, yeah, I'm really behind you, but Silvertown's still going on? You know, sorry, for me, it's a massive contradiction. But if you can see, I'd like to know what your relationship is going to be with the mayor if you've met him before. I don't know, or how you intend to get some better results for the residents of Southwark, because we're really not doing very well. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Jane, I have met the mayor and I will continue to work with him constructively and make sure we'll stand up for the projects that matter for Southwark. And you'll understand I'm not going to get into a debate around which infrastructure in London should and shouldn't happen. But the things that clearly do matter for our borough are getting a river crossing in Rotherhithe, and that's something we'll continue to campaign for. Extending the Bakerloo line, something we'll continue to work and do the work for, and TfL are working actively on that with us. Around safeguarding the stations and doing the planning work for that, and they continue to. On reopening Camberwell Station and making sure we have a better connection there, and we're doing active work there again with TfL and with Network Rail. And they're big projects, but you know, we have to understand what's happening here. I appreciate, you know, this is an opportunity for you to try and score some political points against Sadiq, but let's aim our guns at the right audience here. Clearly, the government are very actively attacking Transport for London at the moment. We saw that with their threats to do away with travel for young people, to extend the congestion charge zone overnight out to the circular, and to do these things purely because they thought they were electorally advantageous for them. And that's what's going on with TfL's finances right now. And that's left the mayor with an impossible situation, whilst we know he's trying to get the job right of keeping the maximum number of services running so people can stay safe and stay distant from each other, in a system where he's entirely dependent on fares. And that's left a hole in the budget, which needs to be covered in the short term. But we also know TfL is a world-leading transport infrastructure. And when people start getting back on the tubes, when we've got a vaccination, and let's hope that comes soon from the news we heard today, and we can fill those buses and those trains back up again, TfL is a healthy organisation with sound finances and can start to invest again in the infrastructure we all want.
Thank you, Kieran. I've got 4 more members so far that have indicated they wish to speak. I've got Jason next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for making the time to come and answer some of our questions, Kieran. My question was around our pension fund. I know it's something that comes up frequently, and I appreciate that during a time like this, we're trying to balance protecting the finances of our future pensioners alongside meeting our targets from a climate change perspective. And given that we've declared a climate emergency, it's important for us to work towards our commitment of ensuring that we're divesting from fossil fuel companies. And I just wanted to know, given the commitment that we made back in, I think it was 2016, what measures you plan on taking with your new cabinet to ensure that we just don't dwell on those commitments, but we're actively making steps to divest from fossil fuel companies. I know we're known for leading the way on many things, but this is certainly an area where we could certainly go above and beyond what we've already committed to doing. And it'll be good to hear your thoughts on your approach to ensuring that we divest from fossil fuel companies for our pension fund.
No, I mean, Jason, as you say, this is an area where we've led the way, and local authorities and other major organisations nationally are looking at what Southwark does on the approach we've taken. My commitment is to move as quickly as we sensibly can to fully divest from any investments in fossil fuels. I say sensibly we can because there are 2 clear important factors here. So one is this is people's pensions, and so we need to make sure we don't reduce the size of the fund for any decisions we've made. And I think over the long term we can be confident that investments in green investments have a better return, actually. So over the long term, that makes sense. But secondly, many of our investments are tied up on a longer term basis, and we have to wait till they renew and it's the right time to do it. And if we were to rush to pull them out, there'd be a financial cost and also a risk in terms of the return we would get. So I want to do it as quickly as possible whilst protecting people's pensions and get us there. I don't want to set a firm target for those reasons, because I don't think it's prudent to do so with people's livelihoods. But I will keep the pressure on that we continue whenever we have the opportunity to move money that is always in something that is zero carbon.
Chair, if I might just
better than that.
Yes, if I just can follow up very quickly. I hear what you're saying about not making firm targets, but I think history kind of tells us where we don't have a target, we often aim for nothing. So in terms of having a target, is the ambition here to have a specific target that we're able to hold ourselves accountable to in, say, a few years' time, or is the idea here to kind of just see how things go and then make the decision when we feel the time is right? I guess the question I'm really asking here is, when will you make a commitment, and when will that target be made?
And it's a good question, but we're not going to make a commitment. This is definitely one where you're going to have to judge us on our success. For all the reasons I've said, I think setting a commitment just would be a risky thing to do for a pension fund. But I would welcome coming back to you on a regular basis and telling you what progress we're making, so you can judge us on the success of what we're doing.
Okay.
I'm sure we will, Kieran. Okay, the next person is Humera. Sorry, I missed it before. Sorry.
Hi, welcome, Kieran, and congratulations from me as well. And sorry, this was a late in the day question, which I got over to you this afternoon, but I think you're probably aware. So it's a broader question about our influence with the MHCLG, because it feels like over the last 40 years, power has been taken away from local authorities to central government bit by bit. We won't have a stab at which governments have done what. However, we've got a really pressing matter that's affecting residents across the borough, and that's around cladding. It's around the requirement for EWS1 forms and the whole shenanigans that's going on around this particular story. And so my question or questions to you are, do you think we're going to have, with you as leader, a better success rate in terms of having positive devolution of power, if possible, from the MHCLG, so that we can actually get on and support our residents? And in the specific case around cladding, what commitments can you make to kind of move on this very, very quickly? Because we've got some residents in some real dire straits right now, and this is affecting not hundreds but thousands of people.
So obviously we will work to influence and work with wherever we can in MHCLG to improve the lives of our residents, and whether that be pushing for more grant for affordable housing, or indeed on this important issue of EWS1 forms, we will do that. I have already met with the Housing Minister, Lord Greenhalgh, and raised the specific issue with him of EWS1 forms, and I wrote to his predecessor. Unfortunately, one of the difficulties here is they keep changing housing minister every other day, it feels like, at the moment. So you meet one, and then by the time you've got to know them, the next one's come into role. I do think this has been a car crash nationally around EWS1 forms. People might know the history. They were developed by RICS as what they thought was a pragmatic way to deal with tall buildings. The mortgage lending industry adopted them, then applied them to shorter buildings. We're now in a situation where there are only, depends which figures you look at, but something like 100 to 300 people in the country who can actually issue the certificates. You can't get hold of them for love nor money. There's a 42-month waiting list to get access to somebody. In Southwark, we've managed to get to arrangement. We're piloting delivering that with a few of our blocks at the moment. The results of that, I think, are due maybe this week or next for the first round of those. But we've, like everybody else, have struggled. We set out the case really clearly to government that this is something that needs legislation. It's the legislation that's wrapped up with the response to Grenfell, which is still delayed. It is extraordinary, isn't it? We're this far on from Grenfell and we haven't seen the legislation come forward on the back of it. So we will keep making the case. As I say, I have personally to the minister when I've met him and spoken to him over Zoom, and as is the case with this one, and raised those issues with him. But we're not a lone voice in this. This is a case being made by every council in the country. It's been made by, of course, thousands of leaseholders, and it's a case being made by all sorts of people across the industry. And eventually the government will have to listen on this one. The problem is the delay in them coming back.
Just a very quick follow-up, thank you for that. Are you able to make commitments to Southwark residents around providing support in terms of both cladding and actually snagging, because the quality of builds in Southwark is appalling? And I promised the chair it would be really quick. So it's just, you know, what form of support do you think Southwark Council can provide, regardless of whether we have the legal jurisdiction or not?
Well, an important point to pick up on there, I don't think there's any evidence that the quality of builds in Southwark are anywhere worse than anywhere else in the country. However, there's clearly been a national problem with construction and the building control across the country. And that's clearly the case for some developments. There's lots of good builds out there, but there are some that have clearly slipped through the net nationally, and that is the issue that we're all having to grapple with. Can we offer support as council? So yeah, on the first hand, absolutely, we will continue to make the case for the changes that need to happen to deliver for local residents. And of course, I and my team are more than happy, and including Leo as our cabinet member for housing, to work with local residents around what does that mean practically for them. And we won't claim on EWS1 forms, it's a difficult one to provide the solution for as a council, because there simply aren't the qualified people to fill out the forms out there, is the key blockage at the moment. But what we can do, we absolutely will do.
Thanks, Kieran. We move to Gavin now, please.
Thank you, Chair, and hi, Kieran, and I'll add my congratulations to everybody else as well. I wanted to ask a question about a bit of a niche issue, if that's okay. Before I ask the question, just for full disclosure, I should say this is a question about sleeping shifts in social care, and that's an area I work on in my day job for Unison. So the issue is that overnight sleeping shifts are currently not defined as working time for the purposes of calculating compliance with national minimum wage, despite the fact that social care workers, when they do these shifts, are away from their home, from their friends and their family. They're in a place of work, they have work responsibilities, and they would be disciplined if they left that place of work. So my question is, could you let us know how the council intends to proceed on the issue of pay for sleep-in shifts for social care workers? My understanding is that these shifts are currently funded at a rate which is beneath the minimum wage rates. It would be good to know if the council is planning any changes to this, irrespective of any forthcoming legal judgments.
Thanks, Gavin. You'd say a niche issue, but it's clearly a really important issue for those workers that you're referring to. So at the moment, as you know, we're waiting for a Supreme Court judgment on this nationally, on what the national requirements will be, and Unison will be making that case very strongly, I know. So I've asked our directors on this, and we are looking at what the implications for us as a council would be financially, of covering that cost up to the minimum wage. And you'll know that our general commitment is in fact about a living wage for employees when it's working time in normal senses. So I've asked them to look at that detail. We think that the court case judgment is not that far away. You'll know better than me. And so I think at that point we're looking at how we can respond to the case, and it's unlikely that I think we'd be able to move ahead of that at this point. But what I absolutely want to make sure is that we, the council, if that is the requirement that's set down in law, are able to comply incredibly quickly, have done all of the work ahead of that to make sure that we can lead the way in responding.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Jack next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Kieran. I'm going to go back to the issue of transport, if I may, but I'm going to come at it from a slightly different perspective, and I have two questions, if that's all right, Chair. So the first one is that in the council plan, the new draft of the council plan, we've put pursuing the extension of the Bakerloo line in the section around the climate emergency and addressing that issue. But a report from the University of Toronto that was published about 10 years ago said that when the CO2 cost of the construction of underground lines is factored into the overall climate percentage, it can take up to 35 years for tube networks to become climate neutral because of the heavy industry that's involved in the tunnelling. So as we're now pursuing that as a climate priority, has a CO2 assessment of the Bakerloo line been considered along with the carbon cost of construction? And if not, are we willing to look at other options? Because one of the recommendations that that academic study said was that light rail and tram is a much better CO2 alternative to underground lines. And obviously, TfL has already costed and approved plans for tram extensions in the borough of Southwark in the recent past. So is that something that the council has considered? And are yourself and the cabinet open to that, exploring that as an alternative if the CO2 cost of the tube extension is too high?
Thanks, Jack. You forgive me if I don't know the detail on the CO2 extension work, and that's something I will go back and find out about and come back to you. I mean, I think it's important to say on the Bakerloo line extension that whilst 35 years is quite a long time, it's a long time in terms of the climate emergency target we've set. Of course, tube lines will be there, and many of our existing ones have been for, we hope, hundreds of years to come. So the life cycle is much longer than the 35 years. So I think we should take that into account in looking at them. And it's also really important to say for the Bakerloo line extension that it is partly an underground line, but the ambition is it is also, for a very large section of it, an overground line as well, as it goes out further out to the southeast. So on the Bakerloo line, let's do that work, but let's look at it in the round as a project over its life cycle and over the length of the extension, which is really important, and how it adds on to the existing infrastructure. Trams is something, you know, will always be open to looking at what are the best possible transport solutions for our borough, and so I certainly don't at this stage rule anything out. I know there's been a checkered experience with trams in Britain, and you've got some great experiences. If you go to Manchester, really effective. If you go to Croydon, tram that's worked well. But there's also been some catastrophic experiences of trams in terms of cost overrun and the real prices of them and the speed of delivery as well. And particularly when it comes to delivering them in more built up areas that are already busy, the impact they have on existing businesses of closing the road while you do the work, etc. So to be convinced by a tram solution, I guess I'd have to be convinced that the technological solution had moved on to be able to do it at pace without the disruption and with the security of delivery that we need in an inner city area where you don't have open space like you do perhaps in Croydon to deliver much of the network. But you know, we should consider all the options that come to us, and I don't think we should be thinking this is an either-or game. Clearly, finances dictate that to some degree, but you know, investment in the Bakerloo line is, as I say, it's an investment for the next 200 years. There may be other things that we can do that deliver a quicker response that sit alongside that bits of vital infrastructure for the city.
Thanks, Kieran. I mean, I'm not going to question any further on that. I mean, all I would say is that you know, the tram option is not only better on the climate perspective, but it's also vastly cheaper, up to 10 times cheaper than the tube option. So that cost has to be factored in and considered as well. And I just have one follow-up question on the issue Jason raised, and I'm not going to press you to make any commitments. But on the divestment from fossil fuels, one of the things that I think would be really useful for the committee is to know what percentage of the pension fund is currently invested in the fossil fuel industry, because it wasn't in the council plan report. It just said we had reached our target of 5% divestment. But is the percentage 50%, 60%, 20%? Because we can't gauge success without knowing that figure.
That's a good question, Jack. I mean, in general, I think it would be a really positive and helpful thing for the council to do is to publish that data on a regular basis. I think it already is in our performance schedules, or it certainly will be going forwards with the council plan commitment around it. But I can get you the latest number to all OSC members, and certainly we can publish it on a regular basis so people can, in fact, judge us on our progress.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kieran. I have Peter next, please.
Thanks, Chair, and Kieran, it'd be chairs not to kind of congratulate you on your new leadership. Thanks very much for the outline you gave earlier. Not to bang on about it too much, but I would like to briefly revisit some of the comments around the pension fund, having previously sat on the panel. And just one point you made kind of flagged a bit of a concern, and it's just around kind of not wanting to divest in a way that might negatively kind of impact returns, which I mean, I think we can all kind of agree that we wouldn't want to do that. But there should be very narrow circumstances where we rely on that as a reason, like but where as a council we have a lot of our portfolio in very liquid assets like equities, indices and so on, which I believe is still a significant proportion of our kind of fossil fuel footprint. It doesn't seem like a kind of valid reason. I think we have about 250 million in property, if memory serves, which is the kind of thing which would be harder to move away from, and you'd really have those concerns. But just if there's, if I could kind of implore you to revisit the, like, are we relying on that in places where it's a legitimate concern? Is just one. If I could touch on with one other question, I wondered if you might tell us just a bit more about kind of how you're planning to kind of deliver on some of the existing commitments we have that to my mind really tie to Southwark building back better in the future. And looking at the annual performance reports, some of our commitments around some of our, I think, really compelling commitments, whether that's about introducing a Southwark Renters Union, whether that's about the construction company, whether that's about our kind of broader plans for kind of renewal of Southwark's economy. Lots of those are kind of in the to-do column, and it's obviously a really difficult context to deliver such things. So if you could say a bit about how you feel we're going to kind of deliver those in the kind of current context we have.
Thanks, Peter. So to come back to the pension fund to start with, I mean, I guess the two important things in the pension fund are A, not to divest from things in a way where we reduce the amount of money we get when we divest from them. So rushing to sell off things that we own when we end up getting a lower price wouldn't be prudent. Leaving agreements that we have early where there are financial impacts of doing so wouldn't be prudent. So that's what I meant by not rushing, not doing it slowly, but not doing it in a way where we're actually losing money for our employees and their pensions as a result of rushing the change. But to your point, where we've got liquid assets, yes, I think we should be doing that as quickly as we can. And I hope that as people see the regular reporting on this, you'll see a steady and quick shift of investment as quickly as we can. But let's publish the numbers, make sure you've got them, and you can, as I say, judge us on our progress. And I will take the message back and say, and ask the whole team, how can we move even faster on this? Because I think it's a clear priority for members here, and as it is for me. So let me go back and give that challenge back to our finance team. In terms of your second question on the long-term investment in things that will grow our economy, then absolutely we continue to want to do those things. And so whether that's setting up our own construction company, whether it's our work as a growing all sorts of aspects of us as a municipal organisation, then that's exactly what we want to do. I think in truth, right now, this year, we're going to have to focus on getting the stuff done that we need to do to get the economy back to life again, mostly, because there's going to be so much of it to do. And whether that's supporting our high streets, whether that's supporting our businesses more broadly, whether it's our employment support programs, there are a whole set of just the straightforward COVID response. That's going to take a lot of organisational energy that we're going to have to really focus down on. And I think the longer term investments don't go far down the line, but they go into next year when we can really start giving them officer time again, when we have an organisation that's very stretched right now with officers that have really done amazing work over the last period to respond, but worked incredibly long hours to do so, been diverted onto all sorts of tasks they didn't know they were going to have earlier in the year. And we need to just create a bit of headroom for them to do the really important work like the construction company. So I think there's a slight pause on that, inevitably, just about capacity more than anything else, but the commitment to be bold and ambitious on those things continues.
Thank you, Kieran. Move on to Leanne now, please.
Hi, yeah, and congratulations, Kieran. I bet you're sick of hearing it. So my two questions are around carbon emissions. So my first question's around sustainable energy and community energy projects. So one of our key pledges was to support the creation of a community-led sustainable energy projects on our estates. And community energy works really well. It's shown to reduce carbon emissions, increase energy security, reduce fuel poverty, and improve household efficiency. And I think it's a really good way to get the community involved in environmental projects. I'm just wondering how many projects have been set up and what your plan is to roll out community energy projects. And my second question is around insulation. So evidence suggests that 55% of Southwark homes are well insulated. And we all know that poorly insulated homes cost more to run, and they're inefficient, and it contributes to fuel poverty. Do you think we're on track to ensure 100% of our homes are properly insulated by 2030? And how do you plan to fund these things? And I think these are also really important projects, which can help create green apprenticeships and also reduce poverty in the borough while getting people involved in environmental projects.
Thanks, Leanne. And I think one thing I won't get bored of is people saying congratulations. It's very kind of you all, but it's definitely the nice end of the spectrum, isn't it? On your two questions, so the commitment around community energy is one that immediately became very challenging, didn't it, the moment we made it, because the government changed the feed-in tariff. And the model that had existed pre-2018, or up into the beginning of 2018, I think it was, gave a return for people who put solar panels on their buildings that made it financially stack up for community energy companies, small ones, to set up and run. Since then, the changes in the tariff have just made that not financially viable for most of the community energy companies that were being set up pre-2018. Most of the applications that stopped then have stopped nationally, as the tariff just means it doesn't work. What does work, I think, continues to work, is larger established community energy companies who've got less, a lower percentage overhead, got more of the capacity in house. I seem to be managing to make it work, so we want to continue to work with them, including SE24, to look at how they can roll out in Southwark, and that's a piece of work I haven't personally picked up yet, but I'm keen to do so. In the new council plan, we'll set out a commitment to make sure, I think in the draft as you've got at the moment, to increase the proportion of our council homes with energy on them, but we're actually looking to increase that to cover all council buildings, and indeed to work with schools to see what we can do there as well, to make sure we use all of that roof space for the benefit of local people. So finding a model that works is the challenge, that financially works is the challenge, with the feed-in tariff having changed, but we do want to continue to do that. And in terms of getting every building up and every home in Southwark up to a good quality energy standard, I mean, the short answer is we don't currently have the money to do all of that. We've done huge work over the last decade through the Warm, Dry and Safe programme, putting in better insulation of all forms, but particularly better insulated windows. Our major works programme on our own blocks continues to increase the energy efficiency of homes, but it's different for each estate, but in many cases it looks at improved wall insulation, roof insulation, as well as improved window insulation. But just to give you some figures, to bring our own council stock up to a decent energy efficiency standard would take somewhere between £500 million and £1 billion, £500 million and £1 billion. Now that's not money that we can just fund the full cost out of our housing revenue account. And you're looking at a similar cost for private homes. People may remember that in the last Labour manifesto there was a commitment to provide £10,000 per a home to improve energy efficiency standards. Well, that's the kind of investment that you need across the whole of Southwark to bring Britain's very poor energy efficient homes up to the standards of a decent energy efficiency. And we will do what we can, but it is something that needs government investment. And I think it's also something that makes sense for government investment, because it doesn't just deliver more energy efficient homes and lower carbon emissions, it delivers all of the jobs that come with doing that work. It's a long-term asset for the country. It reduces the demand on energy supply, reduces the need for incredibly expensive nuclear power stations and other things that we're paying for through government funding as well. So long-term, it's the right thing to do. We've got a plan to keep investing as a council, but do we have enough money on our own? No, we don't, because of the scale of funding that's required.
Thank you. And I just wondered what you think about the government's Green Homes grants and how we're working with the government to push those grants for up to 5,000.
I mean, it's a very positive thing. I'm glad the government doing it, but I forget the total numbers of money. But I can tell you now, if we got all of the money available nationally, it wouldn't come close to doing what we need to do in Southwark. So its scale is the problem. They're a positive contribution both for private homeowners, and there has been availability to social landlords as well, but it's just nothing near the scale that the country needs.
And are we looking into hydro energy as well?
Into?
Hydro energy.
Hydro energy?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge, but if you've got proposals around that, I'd be interested to.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking at. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
We can have a few mills on the Thames, no doubt. Anyway, Sarah's next, please.
Thanks, Chair. So I've got to say congratulations. It would look really bad if I didn't right now. So you mentioned in answers to a number of your questions, you touched upon walking and cycling across the borough, in particular in response to, I think you mentioned it in response to COVID, in response to climate change, and also in response to kind of healthier living and public health. We obviously have as a borough a number of initiatives that are kind of in place, underway, or being assessed. But I was wondering if you could bring to life what your vision is for cycling and walking across the borough.
Well, thanks, Sarah. I mean, the vision has to be a radical shift of more people to cycle and walk. And when I say more people, I don't just mean kind of young, fit, healthy people, but I want us to be a borough. When you walk around it, you see people in their 80s cycling, and you see people who are 5 cycling. And if they feel safe and they're travelling by bike, then I think the rest of us can probably feel safe and be travelling by bike. And to get there over the next years, I want us to dedicate more of our highway to segregated spaces, so cyclists have space that's safe for them across the borough, and to do that in a practical way. And you'll know we have our Southwark cycling strategy that sets out routes on a long-term basis. We'll continue to update that and refresh that and get more ambitious about the scale of shift. We'll continue to support people to get to their bike, and we'll continue to do the practical things. We set out a commitment to double the number of bike hangers in the borough in the current council plan and in the refresh of the council plan. But actually, I want to go much further than that. I want to get to a place in Southwark where everybody has somewhere to store their bike. And if you can store it in your house, that's great. And that's the first option. But if you can't, because you're in a small flat with no storage space, that there's an on-street or on-estate option for you. That's where we want to get to. And sorry, and you said walking as well, which I should say too. I mean, the green routes across Southwark, really important for that, and whether that includes the low line, for example, and the routes along our railways, really important parts of that. But also just making sure we continue to link our green spaces, and you have those corridors that, most obviously down the centre of the borough that take you through from Peckham Rye into Peckham, down Burgess Park, through to the new Elephant Park. Really turning those routes into ones that, if you walk down them over the next few years, you increasingly see them as feeling like a great place for you to be as a pedestrian, that's safe and enjoyable.
I think they're called green lungs, something like that. Anyway, okay, I'm going to be very, very kind to you, Mara, and she can ask the last question, Kieran, before we take our break, please.
Thank you. So this is about COVID and the impact on things like the New Southwark Plan. I appreciate you kind of did a very rapid sort of turnaround on your revised plan, bearing COVID in mind. But if I'm thinking about this plan and designated areas for big office buildings and some of the things which were very much in train prior to COVID, are they still relevant now, especially when we're seeing lots of data and statistics coming from corporations who are moving away and trying to increase levels of home working or distribute around to other parts of the country? And with Brexit coming along, hot on the heels, are we going to, I don't know if we're going to see it necessarily an exodus from London, but certainly a decrease. And my question is coming from a point of concern, living in sort of the London Bridge area, about actually sanctioning large office buildings and them not necessarily being used for those particular purposes. But it's not specifically about office buildings, it's more about relevance COVID on the New Southwark plan. Are you comfortable that the plan that's about to be sanctioned is the right plan?
I think we always have to keep a watching brief on these things, don't we? And particularly when we're in a world that's changed so radically as it has. But this is a question I've been asking of all the people I've been meeting over the last few weeks since coming into this role. Are you confident that this building you're telling me is a good idea, that you can fill it, and that you can fill it with office use that's going to provide jobs for people in our borough or not? And I have to say, I'm not hearing from the industry. When I say the industry, I mean both those who are building buildings and those who are occupying buildings, a sense that there's suddenly going to be a mass vacation of office space in Southwark. There seems to be, to some degree, more appetite to come across the river into somewhere that's not quite so central. And so, I think we can be not complacent, but we can be reasonably optimistic that we'll continue to have a demand for big employment spaces for large numbers of people in our borough. And of course, that's going to be very difficult right now for the next, let's hope it's not very long. Let's hope it's through into sometime next year and not longer than that. Those offices will be under occupied for sure. And we know they are, our own offices are indeed at the moment. But I think we can hope that people will come back, and that's a collective effort. In terms of the plan more broadly, then yes, I think it's the right plan for our borough. And it's a plan that's predicated most importantly on delivering homes for people in Southwark, and delivering the infrastructure that goes with those homes that people need, making sure that we deliver the public realm that goes with them, and really importantly, delivering employment for people. And we have to continue to grow our local economy, and we can't assume it'll be the exact same industries that move into those buildings, and it might not be financial services and professional services, but we need to think about what that should be. And my interest and my passion, I suppose, in that is in making sure that the growth we get is very much rooted into Southwark's strengths. And so it's rooted into our biomedical industries, world leading ones. It's rooted into our cultural industries and getting them back to life in all of their form, and rooted into green jobs, and whether that be from the insulation that Leanne was talking about, and the energy schemes, right through to the startups, and creating the science and the digital technology that can help us reduce carbon emissions too. So I think we can be confident it's the right plan, but not complacent.
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you for all your time this evening, which I say is greatly appreciated, and your responses. As I indicated at the beginning, we're going to take our first break now because we're over the hour. So we'll come back to consider the council plan, and Kieran's kindly agreed to stay on for that item as well. So we'll have a 5-minute break, and we'll come back at 7:46, please. Thank you.
Ah, the newest member of OSC.
Okay. I think people are starting to gather again. The next item is item 6, which is consideration of the refresh of the council plan. As we know, this is coming to the Assembly later in the month, but it's an opportunity just for members to raise any questions, any discussion they may want to have. And as I say, Kieran has kindly agreed to stay with us for this item. And I just wondered, before we open it up, Kieran, if you wanted to say a few words at all on the council plan before we get into the discussion.
Thanks, Ian. I mean, the reason for doing this review of the council plan mid-term, and people will probably be familiar, we normally have one that runs for 4 years across the electoral cycle. But the reason for doing it this year was clearly because of COVID and the impact of that. So there are broadly 3 things we've done in refreshing the council plan. The first thing is to make sure we are focusing on delivering the things that are immediate COVID responses, and whether that be work around test and trace or supporting our businesses and town centres to renew and get going again. That's clearly really important. The second was to make sure that what we've got in the plan is deliverable in the current context, when so much of the council's resources have been pulled into responding to the pandemic. So really, we have focused down some of the ambition in the plan on the things that really matter. And the third that we are still in the process of bringing in, and we'll make sure is more fully reflected. You've got it in the draft you've got at the moment, but we will update slightly to strengthen it in the final version that comes to Council Assembly, is to bring in the really important work we've done on Southwark Together, responding both to the combination of the Black Lives Matter movement and also what we've seen in terms of the disproportionate of COVID on our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, and be really clear in this council's commitment, not just to tackle racism in all of its forms, but to tackle the deep-rooted inequalities that face our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. So that's what we've looked at it as a plan. That means we've narrowed down the commitments a little, but it continues, as you will see reading through it, to be a very ambitious plan for our borough that will take us through to 2022, setting out big ambitions around our commitment to get 5,000 people into work during this 4 years, to deliver at least 1,000 more council homes during this 4 years, to double the number of bike hangers, I say, to plant 10,000 more trees, and many more things that I could list besides, that will make Southwark a much better place for our borough, for our residents who live here.
Thank you, Kieran. I just wanted to ask before I throw it open to other members. Obviously, we've got this extended lockdown again period for the rest of the month, and I just wondered if that might impact at all upon timescales or anything else that's contained within this plan.
I think we feel really reasonably confident that we continue most of the work in this plan within these restrictions over these four weeks. But what I can't say is what will happen over the next year and a half for the life of the plan. I mean, if we find ourselves in a situation where we're continuously, and I hope this is not the case, I mean, and I can say why I hope we won't be there, then clearly that will impact on our and every other organisation's ability in the country to deliver, and how much we're pulled from immediate response through to the big picture. But I think it's really important to say that whilst in March, when we all responded so quickly to this national emergency, and we're coming at it with, yes, some emergency preparation and planning behind us, but not really knowing the intricacies of responding to this pandemic, we're in a very different position going into this period of 4 weeks of restrictions. where we are very clear around the support we're providing to care homes and what the best way to do that, and that's in place. The support that we're continuing to provide, which services can continue, which services, for example, going into people's homes, we need to pause temporarily. So we've got a much clearer picture, and so the knock-on impact is not the same in terms of the number of council services that we're needing to pause. And there are very practical things that are in place now. For people who are not able to get out and about at the moment, we've got access to priority supermarket shopping slots for them, so they can get online and book their food in a way that we just didn't have at the beginning of the year. So we ourselves had to go out and do a lot of that work on people's behalf. So we're much better placed now, but I can't say that COVID won't make it difficult, because it may well do.
Excellent, thanks for that. And can I just say that, you know, I find from my own constituents that the communications that the council has been sending out are very well received, and you know, they're extremely informative. So thank you for that, and obviously your recent letter that was dispatched across the borough. I've got Victor next, please.
I wanted to ask about two sections of the A Place to Call Home section. I welcome a number of the commitments that have been made around fixing the broken housing system. I just wonder if the leader would commit to tackling the cladding scandal to that mix of things that we're asking, you know, that we're committing to lobby the government on, and actually also maybe build on some of the suggestions that Councillor Ali made previously about what practical steps that the council could be taking to help leaseholders and those affected in the borough. The second part of the section I wanted to ask about was around the council homes commitment. So the plan says that there's a commitment to deliver or start on site on at least 1,000 more council homes by 2022. But in the last 2 years that MHCLG have published statistics on, we've had just 24 council home starts and only 105 council home completions. That's 12.9% of that commitment that's being made in the council plan. So why should Southwark residents have any faith that the council will be able to deliver on that commitment, given that we're so far away from actually delivering it halfway through this council cycle?
Thank you for your two questions. On cladding, I mean, absolutely, we're committed to working with residents to address that and to do the national campaigning. And let me take that away, and I obviously need a fuller conversation with both my cabinet member and officers about what the most specific thing we can do most helpfully on that going forwards, as well as everything we've already been doing to date. So I think it's a fair challenge. What can the council specify and do for residents? It is clearly a really important issue for those leaseholders who are trapped in a ridiculous situation at the moment. So I will take it away and I'll look at it, Victor, and I can't say more than that to you today. In terms of council housing, well, you know, we have a huge ambitious programme of council housing, and if you go on our new council home site, I think it's southwark.gov.uk/11,000, if I remember rightly, and you will see the full list of all of the sites that we have being developed at the moment, and it's extensive. And we have currently got, I forget the numbers now. We've got several hundred that are currently on site and being delivered. We've got 1,100 that have gone through the planning process, another 600 applications in place, and another 2,300 that are in the development stage at the moment. So there is no shortage of homes to deliver that 1,000 commitment, and I am absolutely confident we'll get to the point where they are either built or being built by the end of this term, as the plan sets out. And if you want to see the examples, just go on the website. You can go line by line through each of the sites, see where they are, and look at the homes that are being built. And by all means, go and visit them and see the ground being broken, or indeed the bricks going up.
One very quick supplementary then, because the original commitment that was made in 2018 also had a commitment to deliver 1,000 homes at London Living Rent by 2022, and that's been lost in this version of the plan. So what happens to those 1,000 homes? Because I saw just last year, just 26 London affordable rent homes were actually built. And so that's for the last 2 years.
So on that one, I will have to come back to you, Victor, because I haven't got the figures in front of me what we have got delivered in the borough at the moment. But we want to build homes that people can afford of all kinds. Some things we're clearly dependent upon the market to deliver. So it depends on what people come forward with. Clearly, our priority in planning applications is social rent homes, and then we ask for other affordable types as well. And we try to push people to do the things that are going to deliver the best benefit for Southwark residents. So we've really focused on social rent. London Living Rent is something that we hoped many more developers would come forward with than did in the short term. However, what we do have is a range of products being delivered that are affordable in similar income brackets, not least that we, the council, have started to provide them ourselves as well. But Victor, let me come back to you with the numbers.
Thanks, Kieran. Just on Victor's first point, if it's possible to get back to us before the council assembly, just in case, you know, a potential amendment may be submitted to the plan there, that would be extremely useful, Kieran. Thank you.
Chair, could we actually make that a recommendation of the committee?
Well, we haven't come round to considering our recommendations yet. We'll do that at the end.
Well, I'll just give you a fair warning then.
Yes, well, that's very kind of you, but I can chair the meeting. Thank you. Okay, so I've got Humera next, please.
Hi, it's kind of a sort of a point and a question, if I may. So I've had a look through this report that's come through, and I'm a little bit confused because it feels like half of a progress report on things are in progress, but there doesn't seem to be very much in the way of measures. There's a lot of apples and pears. So I have a request if we could actually get a proper report that actually says that we're actually on track with the targets that we'd set ourselves in the plan, rather than just saying in progress, because then from a scrutiny perspective, it's actually quite hard to say, well, why are things falling behind, or why are things ahead of schedule, and could we, you know, up the ante and that sort of thing. The second thing is a question specifically on a couple of items. So we've got things like end single-use plastic in the council, which seems to be on hold, and I think there's a number of items that may have gone on hold. But again, coming back, and sorry if this kind of relates back to the last topic, but could I ask generally, what was the decision making behind putting some of those items on hold, which are still fairly critical, you know, if we are talking about a climate emergency? And do you plan to kind of sort of release them and get them going again before the end of the council year? Or is this that they're actually out of the plan for good?
Thanks, Mara. So in terms of the performance measures, so we publish performance on all of the measures in the council plan every year. So you'll be able to see them, the set that were published previously, and then we'll publish them again at the end of the year. And of course, Os will, I'm sure, want to look at those and consider if there are any that you want to look at in depth. I'm sure you will, as will the other scrutiny commissions. But that we commit to continuing to do that on an annual basis, setting out what we said we do, what we actually delivered, and some narrative to describe if why we've overachieved, or whether we've had challenges delivering, and that's available publicly for everyone. In terms of the commitments that are in the previous plan but not in this one, so there are two categories there. There are some where we had in fact delivered the commitment, and single-use plastics within the council is one. So we have eliminated the use of single-use plastics in the council. Importantly, that's ones that are just used once, and that work, hence taking it out of the council plan at this point, because it's something we've done. There is clearly, of course, more work to do on single-use plastics in the borough more broadly. And in terms of the priorities within the plan, yes, this is a plan for a relatively short period of time. It takes us through to April 2022. This is just having some focus for that period. You'll see it's still very ambitious and expansive, but we wanted to give some focus. Of course, there will be things that we come back to after 2022 as well. And the process of prioritization has really been all the things you would expect. It's been about saying, is this fundamental to our response to COVID, whether that be in terms of a direct public health response or in terms of responding to the economic issues and others that continue. So, for example, we've obviously kept our commitment around getting people into work, clearly an economic priority. We brought in things around town centres, clearly a priority. So that has been the first question. Clearly, there are some other areas of work where they're so in train at the moment that it would make no sense to pause them. Because they're well underway and we're delivering them. And then we've looked at the margins and thought, okay, what, in order to allow and have the space to deliver a nationally leading test and trace system, what can we give way on that allows us to really focus on the stuff that matters?
Okay, great, thank you. I've got Jack next, please.
Thanks, Chair. I've got two questions, Kieran. The first one is to do with the place to call home section. I think the section of the council plan we have on this is very strong in parts, but thinking specifically about the private rented sector, I think we've got two main commitments, one of which is to establish a renters union, which is obviously not something which we have got off the ground just yet. And the other thing is around having a gold standard for private rented sector properties. As obviously you'll know, Kieran, coming through the COVID crisis, at some point the government is going to lift the ban on evictions. And it seems to me like these are extremely important projects for us to have established before we get into that period. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit why those haven't been delayed and what the timeline will be on them? And could you also just tell me whether you think we've gone far enough on addressing issues in the private rented sector? Because there are obviously things that we could have done, such as a 0% deposit loan scheme, a landlord register, and things like that. So could you maybe just tell us a little bit about the thinking behind those two specific things?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jack. I mean, there's clearly fundamental change that needs to happen in the private rented sector. And I guess this plan is looking at what can we do here and now, and then there's things that would need to happen in the longer term, and there are those things that clearly require national action or indeed mayoral action. Just to reference one of those you just listed, a register of landlords is something that the mayor is looking at. We're keen to work with him to do that. We think it would make most sense on a London basis rather than a Southwark basis. If we can get to doing that, that would make a lot of sense to do it once, not least because many people in London don't realise they live in Southwark or Lambeth or Lewisham or wherever they are. So it would make sense for those as renters. On the gold standard, so that's something we've pushed along through, but we've wanted to make sure, and we've set out the detail for, we wanted to make sure it was tied in as a mechanism to deliver it through our landlord licensing scheme. Because the government's kept changing their position and their thinking around that, that's taken a bit longer for us to get through, and it was also slightly delayed by COVID, I have to say, in both cases. The work officers were doing was simply put on hold at the beginning of the summer, so it's been a bit set back. But they're absolutely priorities for us to press on with now. And I think if you wanted to get Councillor Pollock to come back as Cabinet Member for Housing and go through the detail of those with you, I know he'd be delighted to do so for you or for the Scrutiny Commission as well.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I suspect we may ask him to. The other thing, and it's on in the place called home section as well, is more specifically around private rented sector discharges that the council has. So we have a lot of policy around the standard of our council homes, and we are now getting a lot of policy around the standard of private rented homes. But one of the things that the council is doing a lot of, as you will know, is discharging our homelessness duty to the private rented sector. And I'm sure many of us will have had casework instances where those discharges have ended up with people who have come through our services being either in poor quality homes or with abusive or even aggressive landlords. Are we missing a little bit of the circle here? And is there anything you can think of or that Cabinet have considered to address this specific issue of private sector discharges from the council?
Thanks, Ken. So, I mean, an important distinction here, which is really important. So, in Southwark, whilst we place many people who have approached us and have a homelessness application in private rented housing, we don't fully discharge our duty to them. They still have the right to bid for a council home while they're in those homes, which is really important because other local authorities don't necessarily do that. So that's important. But nonetheless, people who have been homeless in Southwark are often finding themselves, as a result, living in private housing. One thing we are looking at is a new quality standard for temporary accommodation, bringing that forward, that would set out the things just about the quality of the home, but also about the quality of the tenancy that you would have and how that works. I think that is something that we may well bring into the, we have brought, I'm trying to remember, I think it's in the new, we put it in the council plan. It's probably not in the version that you've had in front of you. It's something that's come through over the summer as a piece of work that we'll include. So that will be there, and Jack, I'm very happy to go through the detail of that with you so you can have a look at whether it addresses the specifics that you're raising.
Great, thank you, Kieran. I've got Victoria next, please.
Hi, Kieran. Congratulations again. I'll add to everybody else's congratulations on being the leader. And my question is about the health inequalities section. And obviously, it's quite topical at the moment. Everyone's saying the negative impact on disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on BME communities. Can you expand a bit more how you see the council doing that in terms of closing the gap between health equalities? Because there's so many different local and national partners who've talking about COVID-19 and BME communities, but nobody's given any details. Could you expand a bit more how you see the council doing that? And also, sort of supplementary question, are you going to look at the disproportionate impact on COVID-19 on BME communities in terms of Southwark Council staff? Because obviously a lot of our staff and frontline staff, BME communities, are you going to be looking at council staff, or is it just generic across the residents in the borough? Because I liked more details, because there's so many people talking about it, but not many people actually saying what does that look like, especially now we're in a second wave.
Thanks, Victoria. I mean, there's clearly, the things that lead to you having good or bad health are clearly multifaceted, aren't they? And they go from everything from the home you live in, the job you have, through to the quality of health services you receive. And we need an approach that looks at all of those things in the round, because they are all fundamentally important. At a practical level, what does that mean? Well, we'll start with the things that we have very direct control of. We want to make sure that our health checks that we provide, we fund as a council, are reaching BME communities effectively, and they're reaching them proportionately. So we're in terms of health risk, we're reaching BME communities to respond to that level of risk that's in the Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities, and that the follow-up is being effective for them. So as a very kind of practical, tangible end of that. The rest of the work, I think we really have to work through systematically what's going to be most effective in reducing the inequalities that exist. And we know that they go from everything from diabetes and heart conditions through to the whole factors of lifestyle and smoking and other things. So our aim is to work through, if you like, health condition by health condition, but also by the kind of determinant of health by determinant of health. What is it that we can be most effectively take action on? But starting with the things like health checks, where we know we can very quickly check that they're meeting the needs of the population. And importantly, just to keep collecting the data on these things underneath, which you'll know historically has not been done effectively in many areas, so we can actually measure the impact and be clear where we need to have it. On our workforce, that's a good and fair challenge. We do quite extensive monitoring of our workforce. I'm not actually sure what we do on health, so I'll take that back and ask the question. But certainly around mental health, we have a very active programme for the workforce. So let me take that back and make sure we're doing that. But really crucially on COVID, we've done individual risk assessments of every member of staff in the council that really looks at their personal risks, taking into account their ethnicity and all other risk factors, whether they have a disability and other things, to make sure that we put extra safeguards around those who need the most caution and safety around their risks to COVID.
Thank you, Kieran. I've got
Thank you.
next. Gavin.
Sorry, and you just cut out a little bit. I think just when you were saying my name. Thank you. So, Kieran, I've got I suppose quite a generalised question about the entire document rather than specific elements of it. I suppose it's about the breadth of it and the ambition of it. I mean, clearly we all want to be ambitious for Southwark. We all want to be ambitious for the amount that the council can achieve for the people of the borough. But there is a huge amount in this document in terms of the number of different things that we're seeking to achieve. Can I get a sense from you, kind of how confident you are that we can deliver on every single thing we're committing to do in this document, to get it done and make sure that these are as complete as they possibly can be, so that anybody coming back to this in a year or so's time will say, yes, this council has done these things, and we're confident about that.
Thanks, Kevin. I mean, I suppose I partly have to go back to my earlier answer here. some of this does depend on what happens with COVID and other things in the borough over the course of the coming year, doesn't it? Look, it is, as you say, it's a wide-ranging and ambitious plan for the borough. Whilst we've focused down on things that matter, it's still large and it's still a huge amount of work for us to do. Can I promise you today that we'll have delivered every single commitment to the nail by the 31st of March 2022? No, I can't make that promise. Can I promise you that we'll have delivered the large majority of it? I'm confident that we can, and that we'll have made progress on all the things that are in there, absolutely. So, whether some things take a little bit longer in the context of this pandemic, they may do, and I think we all have to recognise that that's a possibility. But can we make serious progress on everything that's in this plan and show by the time we get to March, April 2022, the level of delivery that we've had in Southwark? Absolutely we can, and we can come back with confidence that we'll be able to do that. The scale of where we get to, as I say, will depend partly on where we get with this pandemic. The more we have a national government that acts sensibly, works collegiately with us as a council, really works alongside us to help control the pandemic locally, the more success we're going to have on that. And I think the more we'll push on, and of course, things like having a vaccine rollout to the whole population, not just to an initial cohort in the population again, would be transformational in our confidence as well.
Yes, I think as our economic friends would say, with the caveat, all things being equal. But anyway, we'll move on. Peter, next, please.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. Kieran, really positive to hear about the quality standards for temporary accommodation. That feels really positive. My question might be quite simple. I understand that the kind of council plan refresh in and of itself doesn't entail a quality impact assessment. As in, the report doesn't have it, but could you just kind of offer us some reassurance that as we kind of look across the kind of effect of some of the kind of changes that we're being kind of forced to make, that there is a kind of a consideration in the round about like kind of the adverse effect that maybe had to certain communities from those changes?
Absolutely, Peter. I mean, we looked long and hard at the things that we have. If you see, I mean, obviously there are some things we delivered on and therefore they're no longer in the plan, and we've ceased work on them, of course, because they've happened. Where we've downgraded things, we've looked long and hard at them, and the things that have stayed in have been the things that will have the most impact on responding to this pandemic and reducing inequality. What you will see in the final version of the plan that comes forward for Council Assembly is we've particularly fleshed out some of the commitments that flow through from our Southwark Stands Together work. So whilst the current plan has some quite high level commitments in there that were always intended to be, if you like, a placeholder for what came out of that really important work we did over the summer, the revised version of the plan will have some very specific commitments around 100% school inclusion, because we think that's so important because of the number of Black, Asian, minority kids that are being excluded from school disproportionately, around support to BME-led businesses, around working with the police, around trust and confidence in the police, because we know, again, it's Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities that are being have most concerns about stop and search, for example. So what I can say to you, Peter, is we've not just looked at making sure that the equalities impacts of this plan don't fall, of the changes in the plan don't negatively fall on a particular group of people, but we've really looked long and hard at making sure we actually take more action to close inequalities that are faced by equalities groups, and not just Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, the LGBT community as well, for example, women as well, people with disabilities, etc.
Sorry. Yes, thanks again, Kieran. I'm conscious that we've also got the performance statistics report to consider next. I haven't had any other member indicate on this, so I just want to go back to Victor's earlier point, if I may. As we're aware, the Council Assembly is coming up in a couple of weeks, and obviously the political groups will be able to move whatever motions and amendments that they wish on that particular report. But I do think the subject that Victor raised in relation to cladding and leaseholders, etc., as you talked about, Kieran. If we can just underscore in the minutes that you'll give a commitment to come back to the members with some wording before the assembly, so that we can look at it, and then obviously if it's taken at the assembly, then so be it. We can vote on it there. But I don't think there's anything else that we need to raise at this point in time. Victor, do you want to?
But I appreciate that, Chair. I think that's very helpful. But I just wonder if we could go further and actually formally recommend that one of the parts of the plan says that we will lobby the council, lobby the government on a series of things. And actually, I think we could add tackling the cladding scandal to that as one of the things that we think we think the council should be lobbying on as part of the council plan. And then, we could also, maybe we could ask Kieran to go away and look at what other practical steps the council could take to support, leaseholders and residents.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's what Kieran's given a commitment to do. I don't think we can formulate those words this evening. We'll wait on Kieran to get back to us with those words, and then that will be circulated for members of the committee. And as I say, if required, we'll vote on it at the assembly. So,
but Chair, how will we as a committee be able to make that position clear? How will we make our position clear?
You can speak at the assembly, can't you? Nobody's stopping you from speaking at the assembly. Huh? You can raise it there. Hopefully, you'll have the opportunity to speak on it. I mean, we can't amend this document because we haven't got the powers to do that. But Kieran's given a solid commitment. He'll come back before the assembly with those formal words. We'll be a lot clearer then on what's being suggested, because obviously he hasn't got all the information to hand in terms of the practical steps. So let's wait for those words, and then if there's any dubiety, then as I say, you've got the form of the assembly. This isn't the last word on the document.
Sure.
Okay.
I just want to make clear that the committee does believe that we formally think that the council should be lobbying the government on the cladding scandal.
Well,
that's all.
No, that's fine. I think Kieran's got that message out and clear.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Hammer it down too much. So on that basis, then can we agree and then move on to the next item, please? If that's okay. Thank you. Right. Okay. So item 6, which again, 7, which Kieran's kindly agreed to stay with us on, is the annual performance report. This document, as you know, was released back in July. There's a further one to come in December, which I'm sure Kieran may wish to speak to. And I think we've got Anya on the line as the relevant officer who has compiled the report, just in case there's any questions that she may be able to deal with. But again, similarly as before, Kieran, would you like to say a few words before we open it up to discussion, please?
Oh, well, you've heard a lot from me this evening, so I'll be very brief. So this is the document that sets out, Hamara, as you asked for, our progress across all of the council plan commitments. Clearly, this covers the period up to the end of March. So it's effectively our progress pre the COVID-19 pandemic really kind of hitting in full scale. It sets out the scale of our midterm rather delivery, and I think is a really positive document setting out the number of people we've supported into work, the number of new homes we've delivered, and the list goes on. And I think it's just a really important progress update for OSC to see and for our residents to see. As I say, it's something we'll continue to publish annually. The next one will come out again in the late spring, early summer next year, once we have all the performance measures in, and will be set against the new revised council plan that we have now. But I'm obviously more than happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kieran. I appreciate that. I've got Jack, please.
Thank you, Chair. Kieran, this was thanks for staying on, Kieran, for such a long meeting. This truly was a really remarkable document, actually going through and seeing all the successes that we have had in such a short space of time. And I think all the members of the committee who have spent the time to go through it would be really impressed. But one of the things that did raise concern with me, and I know that you will share this concern, was around the pledge that we have for 80% of domestic violence survivors referred to sanctuary staying in their own home. The rolling average figure that we have for that target is 37.5%, which is obviously a very long way off the target for such a crucially important policy area. Could you perhaps tell the committee why we're falling so far behind on that target, and what plans we have in place to get up to the 80% as quickly as possible, especially in the context we know that COVID has seen an increase in domestic violence?
Thanks, Jack. I mean, obviously, it's a really important commitment, as you say. We want to make sure we're delivering it. One of the challenges with this target has been just having access to the data. So that what you're seeing is the people we know who've stayed in their own home. What we don't know is of the others that are not, whether some are in fact. That's partly because of the confidentiality that agreements that had been in place with our domestic abuse support agencies, with Solace. We're working through that, so we hope that the numbers will look much better when we have better reporting on that. I don't know if Annie, if you had any other update on that one you wanted to add.
Thanks, Kieran. No, just basically similar to what you've just said, that there's an issue around the reporting of this data and what we can get from Solace, basically because of confidentiality. And I know that that's something that was raised in the last performance challenge meetings, and officers were asked to go away and look at what more we can do to get some of that data in terms of the figures without necessarily kind of getting the exact information about obviously who those people are. So as Kieran said, when we have that kind of fuller picture, we would hope that the numbers would be higher. If you wanted any more sort of specific detail on that, I think we need to get the department to kind of feedback on that.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Kieran and Annie.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, I've got Humera next, please.
Sorry, I must apologise, Kieran. My question earlier, or my point earlier, was actually about this report. I'd merged both things together. So my point still stands. So I just wanted to get a sense of, we've talked about there's great progress in here, but we're not comparing apples and pears. There's a lot of things in this report which just says in progress, but I have no idea if that's in progress, on track or not on track. Is there an opportunity to review this particular report and perhaps, sharpen it up so that it's actually scrutinisable? There are some items which you can see, there are some numbers, but there are others which actually don't tell you anything. And I'm not asking for a project plan to be buried in here, but if we are going to scrutinise it properly, I think my request is either there should be some metrics and measures in there and targets, or otherwise we should be provided with the documents that sit underneath it. Is that possible?
Thanks,
Happy to
Mary.
give examples offline.
So that's obviously a very fair challenge. Clearly, there are different kinds of commitments in there. So there are those that are very easy to measure, number of people supported into work, versus those that are about influencing government policy, which is obviously more process-based, but really important that we do those things as a council. However, having said that, I am very, very determined to make sure that we get better and better at sharpening up our performance measures. So all of those things that are clearly definable, measurable things have clearable, definable measures against them. And so, yes, I hope when you see the new performance schedules following the new council plan that we'll be finalising towards the end of this year, and you look at them next time round, you'll get something where you feel that they've moved on to the next level of being clear in terms of deliverability and measurability and accountability.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. I just want to say I intend to move a recommendation in relation to how we consider these reports in the future to come back to our next meeting. Apparently, this whole matter was discussed before I was chair, but it wasn't resolved. So I will be moving a recommendation, which hopefully means that we will get to be able to see this information on a quarterly basis. So we'd be able to track, as Humera said, how the council is performing on a more regular basis. And I think that would be helpful for all of us at the end of the day. But I won't move my recommendation just so. Are there any other further questions? Because somebody else has indicated in the chat box.
So,
No?
Chair, could I ask a quick one? And so it's a detailed one, but it's in your old area, so you'll probably be able to disabuse me quite quick. It was just the length of stay in temporary accommodation, which I mean, I'm sure all members will kind of receive lots of kind of casework around this. I just wanted to understand why we kind of have a longer target than a higher target than what we've been delivering against. So like 44 months is down as a 2019-20 target, in spite of us kind of achieving like closer to 27 months before that. I feel like I might just be misunderstanding a technical thing in this. Could you clarify, please?
I think you caught me on there on one piece that I probably can't clarify, so coming straight back to you on the detail of that one. So I think I'd have to come back, unless Anya, you're able to help at all on that one, but possibly not. I think we might have to come back with a response. I mean, temporary accommodation, it's clearly a very, the length of time that people spend in temporary accommodation is clearly a very difficult thing for them, for the people, but it's also a real challenge for us as a council to bring down and control. But I think you're quite right. We should have a target that makes sense.
Yeah. Just I mean, like, taken at the surface level, it's like, we've known it around, we've seen it around 2.5 years, incredibly long time, really tough on families. So having a target that's like nearer 4 years feels like kind of quite a concerning shift.
It's certainly not a target. We're certainly not trying to extend the period. Let's be clear on that. We're clearly measuring our success against something that is a long way higher than what we're doing. So I think we need to look at whether that's the right measure of success. I think is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kieran.
Sorry, I keep cutting myself off. Okay, are there any other questions before I move to my recommendation? Okay, good. Okay, well, I just want to say that there is this further update report coming to Cabinet in December. We will be able to consider that at our first meeting in January, so that will give us an opportunity to look at more up-to-date figures across the piece. But I just wanted to formally move this recommendation because constitutionally, the OSC is slightly out of the loop at the moment in considering these reports. So I want to make OSC firmly in the loop as we go forward. So my recommendation is the committee receive a report at the next meeting on the 12th of January to consider its role in the performance challenge process and mechanism for performance monitoring in relation to the delivery of the refreshed council plan. So that's my recommendation, that we will consider that process at our next meeting. Humera, are you still seconding me on?
I'm still seconding, yes.
Thank you very much, that's very kind. So can that be agreed, please? Yes?
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, can I just say before we move on to the next item, how grateful we are, Kieran. I think you must feel as if you've been interviewed 3 times this evening, but we do really appreciate the fact that you've persevered and answered all our questions. And I'm sure all of you know that at these very stringent times, you've got a lot of challenges individually and collectively. And I know that we're all here to do as much as we can to support you in your endeavours on behalf of the council. So you go with our best wishes, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again, no doubt, in the near future. So thank you once again, Kieran, and we wish you well. Good night.
Thank you, Ian. And can I just say, I mean, I do think there's incredible value in the work of Scrutiny and making sure we are genuinely delivering for our residents. It's really, really important. So my thanks to all of you for that work. And if I could also just take a moment to say as well, at this point of being in the situation we are with COVID, I know the role of all councillors in communicating to our residents about what's happening, what the restrictions mean for them is incredibly important. So I encourage you, as I know you all are, to keep giving the message to everyone in Southwark that it's really important that they follow the rules. And as frustrating as it might feel with them chopping and changing over time, with some of the less than clear messages from the government, if we can all collectively give that message, I just think it is the single most important thing we can do as councillors right now.
Great. Thank you very much, Kieran.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next item. I'll open it up, but obviously we'll have to take a break in about 15 minutes or so. So the next item is item 8, the scrutiny review of regeneration. As you know, as part of our scrutiny review process, we've contacted a number of community organisations to share their views on regeneration in Southwark, based on their past and current experiences, and also to try and glean their thoughts on how regeneration should be shaped going forward. I'm very pleased to say we have 4 representatives this evening, and I intend to take each of them as they replied. So first of all, we'll be hearing from Barbara Patterson from the SE5 Forum. Then we'll be hearing from Jeremy Leach from the Walworth Society. Thirdly, we've got Amir Eden from Living Bankside. And finally, we've got Jerry Flynn from the 35% campaign. Can I start by thanking all 4 of you for agreeing to come along this evening? And it's appreciated by the members here that you're giving the time. And you've already given 2 hours already without saying anything, so we appreciate you staying the course with us. What I intend to do is to listen to all 4 representatives, and then I'll take questions at the end. So if we can begin with Barbara first, please. And as I say, if you could keep it to 5 or 10 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Barbara. If you could come off mute, Barbara, that would help. No, you're not. There we are. Hello? No, we can't hear you, Barbara. Is the volume down?
Sometimes you have to leave and rejoin the meeting when this happens.
Oh, really? I'm afraid we can't hear you at all, Barbara. I think Jimera said you might have to leave and rejoin, if that's okay. And perhaps we'll take Jeremy while we're waiting for you to come back on. Okay. Sorry about that. So Jeremy, we'll listen to you. Sorry to bring you up the queue there, but if you'd like to speak to 5 to 10 minutes, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Lovely. Can you hear us okay? Is that all right?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Ian, thanks so much. And thanks to the committee for your invitation. Thanks ever so much for Everton to facilitating this. So my name's Jeremy Leach, Chair of the Walworth Society, and I'm just going to run through a few of these issues. If I've not hit the sort of spot exactly, I do apologise, but I'm just going to sort of give you a sense of our experience in Walworth. So just really quickly, the characteristics of Walworth, obviously it's not a particularly affluent area and retains some of the pockets of deprivation that were first identified even in the Booth report of the late 19th century. It's one of its great attractions. It's a very diverse area and benefits from a wide range of different communities, and many people live in the large number of Southwark Council estates to the east and west of the Walworth Road. Couple of other notable elements of it is car ownership levels are low, and there are significant issues with public health, most notably childhood obesity and people living with multiple long-term conditions. Really interestingly, the Walworth Road's the most walked to high street of any town centre in Southwark, and that's by some way. And if well designed around people on foot, the Walworth Road is really perfectly placed to benefit from the emerging move to more locally centred living, which, you know, may be one of the outputs of the pandemic. You know, as with many parts of Southwark, there's been a great deal of change across Walworth in recent years, with the redevelopment of the former Haygate estate, the redevelopment of Manor Place Depot. Ongoing is the real redevelopment of the Aylesbury estate, the shopping centre at the Elephant and Castle, and then the regeneration of neighbouring Old Kent Road, and obviously really attractively the delivery of a large number of new council homes across a number of sites in SE17. The areas, you know, for people like me is really attractive because there's a strong sense of community with many active groups. And I think we're going to start to get to the point of regeneration now. It's really encouraging that there are signs of partnerships which are being initiated and facilitated by Southwark with major local developers such as Notting Hill Genesis, working with community groups and Southwark Council in the newly formed Walworth Group. So this is sort of tripartite of developers, community groups and Southwark. Many of the elements of the original aims of the Walworth Neighbourhood Plan, which sort of began to emerge from the 2011 Localism Act, of an improved public realm, good walking and cycling links, increased greening, conservation of heritage and nurturing of local businesses, are being considered and being delivered as part of other projects. And obviously I won't go through them. There's a lot of significant initiatives going on at present in Walworth, such as the new Library and Heritage Centre, the Heritage Action Zone and the Conservation Area, Low Emissions Neighbourhood and the Healthy Streets. So in our view, the priorities that touch on regeneration require a focus on the Walworth Road as a core local high street. The Walworth Road's played an amazing role for local people during the lockdown. And then we touch on to the new Southwark plan. A number of the local low-cost food retail outlets are key and deliver low-cost food to people in deprived communities across Walworth. A number of them are under potential threat from the new Southwark plan designations. These include Ollie Stores, the 24/7 Turkish store, and Iceland in New Southwark Plan Designation 81, and the Morrison site in NSP 80. It would be extremely damaging if they were allowed to close for any period of time during redevelopment. And to avoid this, the Walworth Society, and I hope other groups, have proposed intensifications of the uses of these sites rather than their wholesale redevelopment. So I think that's a really important point, is the potential, and obviously this can tie into the climate emergency. Rather than knocking everything down and starting again, can we intensify the sites, such as on the Morrisons one, the surface level car park there, while retaining the use of the supermarket. The Walworth Road continues to lack a strong business voice, with no single body to coordinate support for the businesses, and also a strategy remains needed for East Street as well. And I think it's vital that a town centre plan for the future direction and day-to-day management of the Walworth Road is developed and delivered. So I think that idea of thinking about the town centre, perhaps with the local business, is important. And also opportunities are being missed in the regeneration to enable sustainable freight and cargo, and a sustainable freight hub should be required as part of the Morrison site development. It's really important in the regeneration that we improve employment and training opportunities locally, both as part of the schemes through creating employment while they're being constructed and through apprenticeships, and also opportunities to improve skills locally through mentoring and skills development in both the Elephant and Castle Old Kent Road regenerations. A perfect example of this might be that the businesses that come to work in the redevelopment town hall supports local startups and businesses, and for example, the higher education institutions in and around the Elephant develop local training and upskilling programs. The key public realm infrastructure task in the medium term is the design of the Walworth Road at its northern and southern ends, where it remains a wide, fast and intimidating and dangerous road that's out of place with the requirements of a pedestrian and cycle-friendly high street. There's been huge investment, and this is about to occur to an even greater degree, in the new Library and Heritage Centre, the Walworth Square, and in due course the Town Hall. And on the other side of the road, there's the new co-op. But the 4-lane road remains a barrier to people choosing to walk between Walworth Town Centre and the Elephant. In the south, the Walworth Road is wide and fast again from Liverpool Grove down to John Ruskin Street, and remains a barrier to the economic successes in the southern section around the Gateway estate. And it's a poor environment for the thousands of existing and new residents for the redeveloped Aylesbury estate, who will in time seek public transport access from this part of the Walworth Road. And while we feel the quality of the built environment is strong in the redevelopments that Southwark's guiding, for example, in Manor Place Depot, the first development site at the Aylesbury, and the council homes, which really look fantastic and high quality, the development and quality of the public realm and streets that are being built are more open to question. The Manor Place Depot site is a very hard urban landscape, for example, and again, the declaration of the climate emergency and the way streets are being thought of could evolve. We'd like to see an active conversation occurring about the design of the streets in the first development site at the Aylesbury and how they need to evolve, especially in relation to car parking and landscaping. We're keen to, I'm nearly at an end now, I promise. We're keen to take part in further conversations on all of these issues, and we really do welcome this chance to present to you, and hope this input is not just seen as a one-off. One of the issues that local groups face is that the Walworth Group can start to address the ability of people to participate actively with officers and councillors in developing a vision for and contributing to the development of the Walworth area. The development of this Walworth Group is really encouraging, but we'd like to see this develop further, and a plan for Walworth and its development that is articulated and discussed widely. B, that this includes the management and evolution of the Walworth Road, which is so important locally as our local town centre. And C, that there's transparency and communication of the allocation of the Section 106 and SIL funds, and that these are clearly applied for the long-term benefits of communities across Walworth in line with all these identified local needs. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that's of use to you.
That was excellent, Jeremy. Spot on. So you've got that well timed. Thank you very much. Can I just check if Barbara's audible? Can you take your mic off? So you come off mute. Sorry, Barbara, you're on mute. Oh dear. Oh dear. No, we can't hear a word, I'm afraid. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if Fitzroy or Everton can assist. But you're not coming through at all, Barbara. Oh dear. I think perhaps you might have to go out and come back again. If there's, what I intend to do is I think I'll take one more. I think we'll have to go on to Amir next, and then see if we can hear Barbara after the break. Amir, sorry to throw you ahead of the queue again, but if you'd like to speak to 5 or 10 minutes, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hello, hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep, you're loud and clear. Yep.
Okay. Good evening, and thanks for the invitation also. So my name's Amir. I'm the executive chair of Living Bankside, which is a charitable community organisation which represents and provides services to people living between London Eye and City Hall and down to about Ministry of Sound, so sort of the SE1 area. We've existed since 1995, so sort of the beginning of a lot of regeneration coming to Southwark and taking hold of Bankside and then moving towards Bermondsey and further down. I'm also a foster carer for Southwark and a lawyer by trade. In terms of regeneration, I just wanted to say first, I echo a lot of the things that have already been said, and they are very much similar issues that we have within the area that we serve. And just to add to those things, one of the things I wanted to mention first is we submitted a paper in 2018 to Cabinet, which looks at a lot of the recommendations around making the process for planning and regeneration much more transparent, accountable, and representative of the needs of Southwark residents. And to add to that, the things I'd like to add is whilst lots of council officers and councillors have great relationships with the local community, and in many areas it works to the benefit of local residents, sometimes it can feel that policy or the way that council officers or councillors are taking a direction, it doesn't necessarily meet with local need. So I think one of the things that has been a major issue, and I'm sure lots of people, and especially the people on the committee have heard, is consultation, and not the quantity of it, but more so the quality and the depth of consultation, and moving beyond the tick box exercise and looking more at specific needs. What kind of things do local residents want? Are they looking for a large supermarket? Do they want certain recreational activities? What kind of things do they want? And a lot of the time that is missed. And going back to the the discussion that was had before this item around inequalities, a lot of the time consultation misses protected characteristics. So people perhaps that are BAME, LGBT, or women, or on lower incomes, and we find that those voices are not necessarily always heard, or their needs are not necessarily incorporated within wider plans, but more importantly, specific development proposals that come in an area. The other things that we find is that because of that, there is an impact on sense of belonging and pride of place. And a lot of people feel that because they're not able to influence and impact change in their neighborhood, that they feel the place is becoming something not for them and perhaps for tourists or whatever else. And in Borough and Bankside, we have a very much a mixed community. You know, we have lots and lots of businesses, and we also have a large residential community made up of people that are freeholders, leaseholders, but also council tenants and housing association tenants. And whilst their needs are diverse and the area is diverse, in that we also see tourist attractions and tourists visiting, residents of the borough don't always feel that they're getting a say and they're getting their needs addressed because of this diverse and mixed neighbourhood. In terms of achievements and regeneration as a whole, our assessment is that whilst an overview of achievements have been achieved, so you could say schools have been built, or perhaps facilities have been built or are going to be built, the detail, what we find is the detail in planning applications, the detail in borough plan is most of the time missing, and it's always at a later stage after planning permission has been granted that the details are being discussed, and the original intention of what was to be achieved in terms of both by the council and by local residents isn't always met. And I think to be able to achieve the things that have been discussed by the previous speaker and what residents want, there needs to be better mechanisms in place to achieve that detail. And sometimes what we find is, what I call is Whitehall thinking, is things are proposed or suggested in an area which are not necessarily wanted. For example, in Borough and Bankside, we always hear that officers have suggested that music venues are part of a development, and that isn't always something that both the developer or local residents need, or in fact local employees. And so I think there needs to be better communication at early stages and detailed communication before planning proposals are coming forward. I think that's most of what I want to say. And yeah, and the other bits have been mentioned by the previous speaker and no doubt by the following speakers, but also within our paper that we submitted in 2018 to Cabinet.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very concise, and I'll ensure that that document is put on the committee members' reading list so that they can view it at their own leisure. Now, let me have another go, Barbara. Let's see, third time lucky. Let's see if you're audible this time, Barbara. Oh no, oh dear, we can't hear you. I don't know what's going on there. Looks like we're going to have you back again, Barbara. I mean, we're going to take a break now because obviously we're over our time. So we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll see if Barbara is back with us. And can I suggest we resume then at 5 to 9, please? So I'll see
Barbara,
you in 5 minutes.
Barbara, could you put your phone number in the chat and I'll give you a call? See if I can help you get moving, yeah? Is that possible? Thank you. Sorry, I need to switch my screen off. Getting a headache. Is that all right, Barbara? You can nod. I can't hear you. If I can grab your phone number, then I can give you a quick call. You're trying to work out where the chat is. No.
Sorry, it's not worth turning the whole computer off and on, do you think, is it?
Not necessarily. It depends what device she's using. If she's using a computer, she may have two different microphones. It depends I don't know what her setup is. So if it's a laptop, then that shouldn't be an issue. I know what you mean, because sometimes it is like reboot the whole thing.
And it's not possible to dial into a Zoom just through a phone rather than coming through.
There is actually. Was there telephone numbers that came with this as well?
Yes, there was, Councillor Early.
Yeah, Barbara, in your request, that's a really good call, Jeremy. Barbara, can you hear us? Oh, she's on the phone to somebody. Hello. I really kind of, yeah.
Barbara is actually showing on my screen. I can see that her mic and her camera's on, so that it doesn't seem to be anything I can do from this end to change that.
But I just, you popped a number in, didn't you, Everton, I think?
It's Fitzroy, and there is a number included on the link.
Yeah, I know she's gone now because she's taken another call. You're absolutely right, though. Yeah, if the phone numbers are in there, she can just like mute that and use a phone number, and then job done.
Definitely.
How are you doing, Fitzroy?
Oh, bearing up, Councillor Alley, bearing up.
Oh. Bearing up sounds better than some, actually.
Oh, well.
Oh, no, that doesn't sound very good at all.
So what's the number then? Is that it says one tap mobile. Are those the numbers?
Yes. Below that.
So would it be 044330088583? Would that be it? Or
hold on, let's go to the meeting request. One moment, callers. Yeah, it's going to be the 0203 number. 0203 481 5237. So, Barbara, can you hear us? So what you can do, you've got it to dial that phone number, yeah? And then we'll be able to hear you. And then you can put your computer on mute just in case. Just in case.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Hey, Jack, how are you doing?
Who's that?
It's me.
Hello.
Barbara's signaling. 2 seconds, sorry. Are you asking us? Are you signing us a question? I don't know, Barbara. Okay, Barbara's got the giggles. All we're saying is phone the phone number and we'll be able to hear you. Sorry, Jack.
Sorry, can I just ask one mad question? Is there any way I could phone Barbara, put her on speakerphone, and then put it through my audio?
Well, I think she's got a phone there, so all she needs to do is phone the phone number and she'll be fine. No?
Can you use the chat, Barbara, if there's any questions?
Isn't there a joke to be made about a scrutiny committee tries to solve an IT problem or something?
How's she getting on? Is she with us?
Don't know. Is asking her to phone the phone number that comes with it, because then you'll be able to hear the voice.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you've got a number, Jason. That's awesome, because we were trying to ask her for a number.
But I just wondered, Ian, whether Barbara could phone me. I could put my phone on speaker and then put my phone to my audio.
Now we're getting to complicated solutions.
Yeah. Let's see if she can phone in first, because it'll probably be clearer.
Jason's going to call her.
Okay, good.
Sorry, Jack. I was asking how you're doing.
Well, thank you.
News of his demise has been iterated.
There you go. No amount of COVID will get rid of me permanently.
He's in robust health, I can second that. Oh dear.
Hi, Barbara. So Hamira was saying there's a number you can try and phone and then to dial into the meeting. Hamira, can you tell me the can you tell me the number very slowly that Barbara might dial?
Sure, it's 020.
Right, 020
3481
3481
5237.
5237. Yeah, and if that doesn't work, we got one more crap idea. Cheers.
Well, there's a couple of numbers, but yeah.
Yeah. Can I remind you, you are being videoed on a public forum.
Sorry.
Less of the language, please. Let's see if she comes in now. By the way, while we're waiting, I forgot to mention that Martin Seaton is on the line, so he's listening to the contributions this evening, and I'm sure he's picked a number of points which have been made so far, just to let people know. Where is she now? What's she up to now? I'm sorry about this. It's just, we'll see if we can clear this up this evening. Well and good, but if not, she'll have to come back again.
Chair, I'm just going to put Barbara on loudspeaker and hopefully she'll be able to get through. Right, okay. Second. Okay, Barbara. Can you hear me now? No. Yeah, sorry, that's not going to work. Sorry.
That's not going to work.
Is there a reason why Barbara can't just phone the phone number?
I've got no idea. Everton, can she just phone in?
Barbara, I'm going to email you the information, okay?
She can just phone straight in.
Well, I'm going to give her the number to call in.
Okay.
All right.
It may be a password related issue as well, not to be everyone opining on things driving the problem.
Yeah, we could be here all night, I think. We'll give her one more chance. No? Okay. All right, Bob, and not to worry. We'll see you in the new year. And hopefully we'll be able to hear you as well at that point. when we have our next meeting. So unless something can, we'll hear off Jerry next. But if it can't be resolved tonight, then we'll have to listen to you in the new year, I'm afraid, Barbara. Okay, I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Jerry, but as you can appreciate, we've got all these technical difficulties. But we'd be grateful if you could speak for the next 5 to 10 minutes, please, and then we'll open it up to questions after that. If that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, for asking me to speak. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. My experience of regeneration comes from living with my family on the Haygate estate and campaign work with the Elephant Amenity Network and the 35% campaign. Our campaign work largely consists of challenging Southwark, private developers and housing associations in their conduct of the borough's regenerations, taking account in particular of the impact they have on local people. This has led us to participate in the many consultations, planning and policy making processes that regeneration involves, as well as various tribunals, inquiries, and in the case of the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre, mounting a legal challenge to the planning permission for the centre's redevelopment. Overall, I would say that the experience of those most immediately affected by regenerations, those who live and work on regeneration sites, is not a happy one. They have lost their homes or workplaces, or will do so, with all the upheaval and in some cases trauma that goes with that, without necessarily getting the benefits that a regeneration is supposed to bring in the way of new homes or new workplaces. I would say that this is the story of the Haygate, the shopping centre, the Aylesbury and other regenerations to a greater or lesser extent. As far as the Haygate is concerned, the new homes that were promised the residents did not materialise, and the leaseholders on the estate received far too little compensation for the loss of their homes, and many had to leave the borough to buy new homes as a result. The leaseholders on the Aylesbury and other regenerations will be in a similar position regarding compensation. And while the secure tenants on the Aylesbury look as if they have more chance of getting their new homes, or getting new homes in the regeneration, both schemes on the Haygate and on the Aylesbury will result in a net loss of social rented housing. The committee will know that the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre has just closed, and this has displaced all the independent traders, who are nearly all from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. About 45 of these traders have been relocated, but many more have been given nowhere to go. Now, Southwark and the developer Delancey dispute the exact figures of those not relocated, but there is no doubt that the centre as a social hub for the various ethnic groups, and particularly the Latin American community, has disappeared. We must also note the loss of the shopping centre's bingo hall. It was the second largest in the country and used by many older Black and ethnic minority people. It provided the opportunity for companionship and had great social value, which is all now entirely lost. It will not be replicated in the new development because it simply does not fit the profile for the new clientele that Delancey is seeking to attract. There are ongoing discussions with Southwark about establishing a small market for displaced traders, and we very much hope that this comes to fruition. Maintaining the Elephant as a social hub for the Latin and other ethnic minority communities should be a priority in the Elephant's regeneration. Turning back to housing, most of the new homes being provided by the Elephant's regeneration are way beyond the means of those in the most acute housing need. While Elephant Park and the shopping centre redevelopment will together provide about 3,700 new homes, only 216 of these will be social rent. Now, by way of comparison, the Haygate had 1,200 council homes. There will also be around 700 affordable homes other than social rent, but we would argue strongly that while these cost less to either rent or buy than free market homes, they are not the equivalent or a proper replacement for the council and social rented housing we have lost. Generally speaking, we are not convinced by the rationale for regeneration. We do not believe that the best option for improved social housing is demolishing entire council estates or that private developers will somehow and almost inevitably create prosperity in a given area if they are allowed to build what they want. The elephant shows the reality of regenerations, that the people who are already there are displaced, and it is others coming in to the area who get the benefit. We think that a fundamental flaw in regeneration in Southwark and London is that they treat development sites as blank sheets of paper without due regard for the people living and working there already. We also believe that not enough consideration is given to the resources of all kinds that the public sector puts into the private developments, as well as the increases in land value that derive from planning approvals. There needs to be a better accounting of this with a view to establishing whether the borough is getting a good return for the money it is putting into these regenerations. Leaving this aside, we can make some suggestions that the committee might like to pursue in its further examination of regeneration. In the case of estate regeneration, the committee may wish to examine the pressure decanting council estates puts on Southwark's housing waiting list. There used to be regular reports on this around the time of the Haygate decant, but this no longer seems to be done, or at least we can find no reports that are publicly available. The committee may also wish to look at the use of home search for decanting tenants. While this allows secure tenants some limited choice of replacement home, is also stressful, tightly timetabled, and requires almost immediate decisions from tenants who are, after all, not moving of their own volition. You may also want to look at the practice of ending secure tenancies on estates once they are marked for demolition. While this minimises Southwark's rehousing obligations, it can leave some long-term but non-secure tenants with no right to a newly built home. It also makes an estate a more transitory place to live and makes for less stable communities. Another serious issue is the level of leaseholder compensation. While the options for leaseholders may have been incrementally improved over time, the fundamental problem of inadequate compensation in relation to the cost of new free market homes remains unresolved, and from the leaseholder's point of view is iniquitous. The committee may also wish to look at the take-up of the various leaseholder rehousing options and whether these options are presented to leaseholders in a fair way, and in particular, whether leaseholders are being deterred from taking up the equity loan option. The committee may also wish to look at the Elephant Park. When completed, this will be 2,700 units, which is 200 more units than was originally consented. Now, the amount of affordable housing has been increased proportionately, but there has been no reassessment of the viability of the scheme and whether it can support a great proportion of affordable housing. On Elephant Park, developer Lendlease has also announced that 900 free market units will now be built to rent and not for sale. This is allowed under the terms of the planning permission, but is nonetheless not what was presented to the planning committee for approval. While build to rent fulfills a market demand, it does not necessarily meet Southwark's housing need as well as more established tenures. It also provides less social rented housing than build to sell free market housing under the NSP policy P4. The conversion of the free market units to build to rent also raises the question as to how Southwark's share of any profit overage will be calculated and realised. The committee may wish to examine the progress of the Aylesbury estate regeneration. The development is at least 2 years behindhand, and the committee will be aware that Southwark has taken over the first development site from Notting Hill Genesis. We believe this raises a question about whether Notting Hill Genesis are willing and able to deliver the remainder of the regeneration. We are also concerned about the number of consented but non-viable developments in the Old Kent Road opportunity area, amounting to about 5,000 consented homes, particularly in the light of doubts and delays to the Bakerloo line extension. These developments all include 35% affordable housing, but depend to a large degree on the Bakerloo line extension for the uplift in land values that will make them viable and deliverable. We also have more general concerns about the credibility and utility of viability assessments. We suspect that they do not reflect the true profitability of major schemes and that the schemes are therefore not delivering the maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing, particularly in the absence of late-stage reviews. In a similar vein, we are concerned about how Southwark is monitoring the delivery of affordable housing in private developments and whether this is being done accurately. It is now 4 years since the local government ombudsman ruled that Southwark did not have a proper system of monitoring affordable housing delivery. And while much work appears to have been done by Southwark in digital public services and towards establishing an effective system of monitoring, it is not clear whether this system has been launched and is actually being used. Thank you, and I hope this is of assistance to the committee.
Thank you, Jerry. That was spot on again. That was very comprehensive and sufficient detail for members to get to grips with. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, I've got a whole host of members who wish to ask questions. I presume Barbara's gone. Yes, she's not back again. Okay, fair enough. Right, so we've heard from the three community representatives tonight. So please, before you ask your question, please indicate which, it may be to all three or maybe to one or two. So if you could indicate who you would like to respond to your question, that would be helpful for all of us, please. So if I could start with Jason first, please. Jason, you're on mute.
Oh, I couldn't hear you, Chair. You broke up.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it's okay.
Well, you can ask your question. Can you hear me now properly?
You're breaking up a bit, but yeah, it's fine.
Okay, I just say, just indicate who's the question for, Jason.
Oh, okay, yes. The question's for Jerry. Jerry, my question was regarding affordable homes. I mean, given the name of the organisation that you represent is 35%, I was wondering whether you welcomed the fact that the planning committee, I think over the past 2.5 years since the new chair hasn't approved a development that has less than 35% affordable homes in its development. I was just curious because I know a lot that comes from you is constructively critical, but I was just curious if you welcomed the fact that the committee has more recently made an effort to ensure that they're sticking to the 35% that the name of your organisation represents.
Yes, definitely. We're happier that the planning committee is now only approving planning applications which have at least 35% affordable housing, and as far as the Old Kent Road is concerned, has 70% social rented housing as well. However, we simply don't think it's enough. You're quite right, we do call ourselves the 35% campaign. I don't think we could call ourselves the maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing campaign, but that is actually what we're after. And when we want maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing, we obviously do want more. And so we have actually submitted objections to, I think, most of the major schemes down the Old Kent Road along those lines, that while we welcome the 35% affordable housing and the 70% of it that's social rent, we want to see the maximum reasonable amount. And we are troubled by the fact that that can't be established because developers are consistently putting in applications which they say are technically non-viable, and therefore the true level of viability of the scheme can't be established, and therefore there are no late stage reviews which could do that. So we think there is an opportunity to go further, and we'd like to see Southwark taking it.
Good. Just a quick follow-up. Can I take it then, Jerry, that you're planning on changing the name of your organisation from 35% to something else?
Well, we have discussed it, but I don't think we are planning to do it immediately. As I say, people know the 35% campaign, and to call it the maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing, or even the 50% affordable housing campaign, might be a bit difficult for us. So we're going to continue as the 35% campaign for a while, I think.
Okay, thank you. It's a shame. I thought we might have the scoop tonight.
Okay.
Well, we can always aim for 100%. Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, Sarah is next. Please indicate who you'd like to answer the question, please, Sarah.
It was a general question, so anyone or everyone is fine with me. often I think as a councillor, when it comes to particularly the kind of built environment part of regeneration, I think we can often feel quite inundated by opposition, whether it's from constituents or from some local groups, not all local groups. And I was wondering if any of you had any advice as to where as an authority we haven't been bold enough or ambitious enough, and where we should put some of that opposition to one side and take more risks in our regeneration strategy.
I think that's a $6 million question. Okay, who's going to answer that then? Jerry?
Well, I think bold and ambitious along the lines of my previous answer. I think we have had the 35% level of affordable housing for many years now. I think in the draft new Southwark plan, it might be an idea to start raising that. There is a strategic target of 50% affordable housing for the mayor, but nowhere ever seems to get that far. And until we start getting individual sites which have at least 50%, obviously that strategic target isn't being met. So I think that might be one area to consider being bolder and ambitious. Raise 35% affordable level higher.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy, did you want to say something?
And just again to touch on the sort of, I do think there's the built environment side of it, and then there's the public realm side of it. And I do think that Southwark is, the appointment of a deputy cabinet member for low traffic Southwark is really encouraging, but it's all part of a suite of policies around the climate emergency, and they all need to come together. And obviously, Southwark Living Streets is another group I'm involved with. They're advocating zero car parking in relation to any new developments. Obviously, say in relation to the Aylesbury redevelopment, there's 0.4 car parking spaces per household. So I don't want to go into individual things, but I do think there's a whole suite of policies, not just around the buildings, but also around the the places that are being created that absolutely can tie in to a whole Southwark approach.
No, you're absolutely right. And can I just say that one of our future sessions, hopefully, we will have TfL and other transport operators, because I know Victor was keen to talk about the Bakerloo line, and certainly, it's been raised this evening by a number of people. So, we will have a session on that in the new year. Amir, did you want to comment on that aspect at all? Or not the Bakerloo line, but what was said just before that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I guess the things, just looking, going back to my earlier point about detail, I think where we can be ambitious is in the detail. So, for example, on carbon neutrality, we should really be looking and pushing for things like the whole life carbon model. So not just looking at the construction of a development, but how in operation and its lifetime it's going to be carbon neutral. So things like that we can push for. I agree with Jerry about pushing for more social housing, definitely. But there's so many other aspects that we could be pushing harder on, I believe. And there are ways to illustrate it so that it is both beneficial to local communities, to Southwark, but also to the developer, because there are things that can be done which are mutually beneficial, I believe.
Great. Thank you very much. I've got Jack next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, so this is an immensely complicated topic, and I think one of the things that we really need to do when we're analysing them, and I'd be interested particularly in Jerry and Jeremy's comments on this, is to kind of divide the policy area into two, because we have regeneration policy, which is largely focused on rebuilding of council estates and council property. And then we have a growth policy, which is looking to increase the built environment in particular areas and kind of fundamentally change them. One of the things that I think, well, firstly, just on a point that Jerry made, just a point of clarification, is that although the original Aylesbury regeneration planning permission would have led to a loss of social homes, I think it's really important to notice that in the new council plan target, we are not accepting a loss in social rent homes across the development. And with the council's acquisition of the first development site, we're now on course with the phases to come to not only reach that target of no loss in social homes, but to exceed that target. with the aim being that a great deal of those will be delivered as council homes, not just social rent homes. And I think that point tells a really interesting story into how Southwark's policy has evolved over time. We started with the Haygate regeneration, which was an all-out, all-in policy of decanting residents, demolishing the blocks, rebuilding them. We've then had the Aylesbury estate regeneration, where we have a phased regeneration, where we move some residents at the start, then with the intention of the design is that all future residents move directly into their new homes on the footprint of the estate. And I think that that's a really interesting evolution. But one of the things which I still think we have to improve upon, and I'm really interested in both Jerry and Jeremy's views on this, is the way in which we think about regeneration. Because from my experience, council officers often look at the problem as one of the built environment. How do we deal with the physical elements of regeneration, i.e. improving a block, either refurbishing it or demolishing it? How do we get to planning permission? How do we move those sites on? And I think because of the way in which regeneration has happened in the past, it's been segmented. So for example, in Walworth, we've had the Haygate, the Aylesbury, Manor Place Depot. They've all been happening in microcosms in a way, which fundamentally means that the policy affects the area in ways that are really unintended because we don't have a wider view. And as Jeremy said, one of the things that we're really working on now is to get the social ties right. So to build up the community organisations that are having a macro view of how regeneration is changing the area. And that's in its early stages. I think if one of the evolutions from this process for the future, I think is very important, is that those bodies should be established first before we get to the physical environment. And so I'm really keen to hear from Jeremy, how is that programme of bringing those community groups together and creating a new Walworth-wide community group going, and how can we improve to make sure we get that right? Because I think it's quite a difficult task to do this retrospectively, and I think we need to learn all the lessons we can from it now, so that if we have any large-scale regeneration of areas in the future, we've learned the lessons and we've got it right.
Okie dokie. So we'll take Jeremy first, then Jerry.
Okay, so I would say that I've not got enough for the full amount of data to address Councillor Buck's question. I think it's a really great question. I think it really is worth, an intense scrutiny. What I would say is, and I agree, it is late in the day, but maybe it's earlier in the day in other places. There does seem to be, again, led and facilitated by Southwark, there does seem to be a good process now to try and start a conversation in Walworth, where, to be fair, an awful lot's already happened, and it's kind of putting it all together. But the spirit is good, the desire of the community groups is good. What I would say, and I think this is a really important point, is there is, in the emerging groups, a lack of diversity. So the Walworth group is full of reasonably well-informed and active groups, but what it lacks is a strong element of diversity. And I think, and to be fair to the group, the groups are utterly aware of that. But we need help, and Southwark need to help us make sure that we become much more representative of the local area, and that conversation is vital, that the group becomes more diverse before much else happens. And I think there are other questions involved, but I do want to make that point the most strongly at the minute.
Can I come back very quickly on that, Chair?
Hold on. We'll let Jerry speak first,
sure.
and then you can say something. Jerry.
Okay.
Yes, I think however you take forward regeneration, the relationship with private developers will remain key for as long as the basis is of a private and public partnership. And your conversation with them will sooner or later come up against the viability of whatever it is being planned, or the profitability of it. And I think there is a big problem here, because quite frankly, the viability assessments that are being made public appear to us to be fiction. It just appears to us that if you have developers coming forward and saying, we have a scheme here, but it's not viable, however, we will deliver your 35% affordable housing. However welcome that promises and however welcome that 35% affordable housing is, there is a problem, because the scheme, by all intents and purposes, should not be deliverable. And however you might try and segment, or however you might try and combine, or whatever way you're going to go around this, if you're dealing with developers, I think this is a problem that's got to be addressed. Also, is Southwark getting value for money at the moment in its relationship both with developers and with housing associations? For instance, yes, it is very good that Southwark has taken over the FDS and is getting nearly 600 council homes. We wouldn't argue with that. But is it the best way of spending its money, given that these were social rented homes in the first instance, which would have been delivered at nil cost? So I think the balance sheet for regeneration in that, in the wider view, simply isn't being drawn up in the way that I think it would have to be.
Okay, Amir wants to come in. Amir, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so on this point, around, I think one of the issues is around looking at things holistically. So this question is very important. And what we find, just to say, is with some developers and with the council on some schemes, it works. You know, there is a good relationship, there is good communication, and development happens in a way where it's mutually beneficial, I would say. But there are other situations or other developments where it doesn't work and it goes really, really bad. And I think the key is for there to be that public-private community partnership on different schemes, but for it to be based on a holistic vision, shall we say. So one of the things that we've started to do some work on, which is going to take some time, and it's not talking about neighbourhood plans, it's more about looking at 3 areas of evidence and basing the kind of things that we want to see in the neighbourhood. So looking at what people say, residents are saying, what statistics show us, so whether it's guys at St Thomas, whether it's the council statistics and their own papers, and audits. So for example, you may say that in an area like ours, we have lots of retail and we have coffee shops, and perhaps coffee shops are now becoming saturated. So what is it in terms of audits that we find are required and are saturated? And I think something like that needs to be done for each of the neighbourhoods, which is supported by the council. And what we find is that developers are keen to engage with things like that. On schemes, you know, new schemes, I've heard developers say, well, what kind of retail should we offer? We don't want to offer all the same of what every other development is offering, because it doesn't make financial sense. So I think there's a lot of work to be done around that. And I think that if the council could help achieve that, then I think we'll get better development. So yeah, that's what I'd like to say.
Yeah, no, I strongly concur with that point, knowing all the coffee shops in Camberwell at the moment. But anyway, right,
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Jack. Oh,
yes.
Goodness me, a voice from heaven. Oh dear. I don't know how you worked your magic there.
I don't.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a couple of members' questions, Barbara, and then we'll bring you in. Is that okay?
Okay. All right. Great stuff.
Fantastic. Sorry, Jack, you wanted to come back? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just very quickly, if I may, Chair. Just to Jeremy's point around diversity and community inclusion, I think one of the really big problems that we've had is a lack of trust. So Aylesbury residents that I represent, a vast majority of them still either don't believe that the regeneration is going to happen, or they don't believe that it's going to be for them. And I think it's really important that when we have the design of these areas, and it's essentially town planning, when we have the design of these areas, we have those community, human-facing organizations set up first, and then we look at the planning aspect, because you know, working class people who are already pushed in their daily lives, you know, they have a skepticism of government and politics delivering for them. They have a real degree of or a real lack of trust in the system, and I think that's important. And that's all I wanted to say back to Jeremy, Chair. Sorry, I appreciate we're busy.
Oh, well, okay, Jeremy, quickly, because
sorry, and just super quickly, I just wanted to say that as somebody who's involved in neighbourhoods funds and Cleaner, Greener, Safer over the years, as it's gone online, the barriers to entry for groups have got higher. And I do think that it's easier for the already formed groups to take part in things. And in a way, you know, it's good governance, but it does make it harder for less organised groups to take part. And I would think about how do you lower those barriers to entry?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Listen, I think I don't really want to bring Barbara in right at the end. I think, you know, to be fair, we ought to listen to her now. So, are you ready to say your piece, Barbara?
Would you like me to do it now, or do you want me to come back on another occasion?
No. So I sort of scheduled we wouldn't get to bed by midnight, so you're okay. So so if you could give us 5 to 10 minutes.
Sure. Yeah, I'll bustle through as best I can. Okay, thank you for this. I'd like to start by saying that I would not be here today if it were not for Lambeth. Lambeth is a cooperative council that regularly and effectively engages with and financially and professionally supports local democracy through a network of local forums, the Lambeth Forum Network. Southwark does not have a policy for community groups or a protocol for community involvement, so engagement is fractured at best and non-existent at worst. A recent example is that after the excellent work done by Magda Bartosh and the Camberwell Good Growth Project, she contacted us to let us know that she would be focused on Camberwell Station Road and suggested that if we wanted to know about the much wider Camberwell Good Growth work, we could contact the officer responsible. The implication here is that there is no Southwark plan or protocol to inform SE5 Forum and presumably other interested groups about this significant work in Camberwell. This does not exhibit a readiness to seek and value grassroots input. There should be an agreed protocol for community engagement at the very beginning of any project, large or small, never mind when it alters, if it alters course. It could be argued that, of course, we could contact the officer, but then take the initiative here. But the principle of encouraging community involvement is not served. A protocol should be put in place. Okay. And then to make matters worse, we think that Camberwell has more than its fair share of complex issues. And sadly, Southwark has recently added to them. The new Southwark plan refers to Camberwell throughout, but it fails to note that it has dissolved the Camberwell Community Council, and the multi-ward replacement splits Camberwell between Walworth and Champion Hill. I despair. This means that there's no consultation mechanism at which Camberwell and its town centre, the historic nature and specific identity of the area, is regularly considered and reviewed, or which enables the local community to contribute to the area vision. We are not aware of any Camberwell councillors raising any objections to this sorry state of affairs. Let it be noted that we've somewhat overcome the negative impact of Camberwell's already being split between two local authorities due to the not inconsiderable support from Lambeth. Now, then the next is uniqueness. Camberwell should be recognized and promoted by Southwark for the center of excellence it is. SE5 Forum promotes Camberwell as a positive visitor and worker destination. We have a plethora of world-class institutions, the South London Gallery, which is this year joint winner of Art Fund Museum of the Year 2020, Camberwell College of Arts, King's College Hospital, the Maudsley Hospital, and the University of London Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience. We think Camberwell punches above its weight, and Southwark should celebrate this. What is missing is a village hall. We seem to have everything else. And then recent regeneration efforts that have served Camberwell well. The community-led regeneration of the Leisure Centre some time ago now is a valuable community resource. Camberwell Green has been greatly improved, but there are still issues with maintenance. The Valmar Trading Estate should contribute positively to Camberwell life. And of course, the work that SE5 Forum has put into reopening Camberwell Station. And I'm very pleased that the that Southwark Council is prepared to support that. Then I'll list a few examples of potential regeneration projects. Camberwell Town Centre is where joined up thinking is needed most. The police station and the considerable land it stands on presents a once in a lifetime opportunity to make the centre of Camberwell a world-class community resource. Please don't let it default to dense housing and the usual minimal social provision. The ambitious Camberwell Lanes projects contains many designed issues that work against a sustainable development that we can be proud of for decades to come. This is worrying. The former Science and Technology Center in Wilson Road should provide another opportunity for a community resource. We don't know what's happening there. The Camberwell Bunker site is an exciting initiative that Southwark is supporting. SE5 Forum is campaigning hard for Camberwell Station to reopen. Southwark business cards should reflect this. The Magistrates Court and environs should present some sort of gain. Woefully little information about this is available. Eyesores such as the old library site and the post office are a blight on the community. Why has this been allowed to go on for so long? And then part of the process should be designing out crime and consulting local police and safer neighborhoods team ward panels before making planning decisions, including businesses in the process of developing policy, taking action to find uses for long-term empty spaces, incorporating the Camberwell identity when considering planning applications in the town center. And an imposition of a condition on property developers at the planning stage that if the new retail spaces below modern developments are not rented within 2 years, they automatically become potential meanwhile spaces that could be used for community uses at costs well below the market value or better as a gift to the community. And in my opinion, 2 years is a long time. Okay. As the A202 is the main artery from Dover to the West End, we would look for evidence that Southwark and TfL are enforcing restrictions on the HGVs effectively through using cameras and new technology such as the scheme adopted by Islington Council. And then you asked about past and present. Past regeneration efforts that did not serve Camberwell so well. Decades ago, Camberwell people were stunned by the banal design and low budget finishes of the Butterfly Walk shopping center, which definitely did not enhance the surrounding conservation areas. There are fears that this may happen again with the Camberwell Lanes initiative. In the town center, we have had to endure seemingly endless redesigns and roadworks, with the most recent outcome being a minimally improved pedestrian experience, with TfL announcing they delivered a cycle safety scheme, for heaven's sakes. Southwark is responsible for some of the roads here and should be working hard with TfL to deliver the ambitious scheme we were promised with the inclusion of social distancing improvements. Of course, there have been improvements over the year, but there is a history of lost potential iconic community assets, and this is really history. Most notably for me are the Odeon Cinema, which most of you won't even know about, which is on the Lambeth side, and the Grand Surrey Canal. Happily, people are more aware of the danger of losing local heritage and beauty now. Okay, and then what we would like to see is a commitment to implement the many proposals by community groups, an effective mechanism to work with local groups on projects that they have suggested, such as green walks linking Camberwell Green and Burgess Park and Brunswick Park, etc. Notice boards on the green, paving stones showing the green walks and Black History walks developed by the local community so that they can be accessed by all. And then distinctive buildings, use the widely consulted identity and branding work carried out by the local community and incorporating the logos and palettes in buildings and streetscape. And then finally, traffic pollution mitigated somewhat by introducing carbon capturing features such as green walls, et cetera, in the space for street trees, plentiful seating, and useful street furniture such as litter bins and post. And then finally, funding the promotion of Camberwell's high streets. And that's, I think that's, I've rattled through everything. I hope you could all hear that.
Yes, thank you very much. That's loud and clear. And I'm very glad that Martin Seaton's on the phone because he can add that to his wish list. on the planning committee. So thank you for that, Barbara. I'd like to go back to the members who indicated before that they wish to ask questions, and obviously, if anybody wishes to ask Barbara a question, that's a question before, that feel free to do so. I've got Gavin next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions for Jerry, if I may. First of all, thanks to everybody who's come along and spoken tonight. It's been really interesting. Jerry, first question is probably a quick one. I think I'm fairly clear on the other organisations that have spoken to us this evening about their governance structure and who they're representing. It'd be good to know a little bit more from you about what your governance structure is and who you are representing. I've been on your website this evening just to try and find out a little bit more about the 35% campaign. I'm not that much the wiser, I have to say. So it would be good to, for transparency's sake, it would be good to know a bit, how you'll run, what your members are, how people become members, that kind of thing. Second question was, is there a contradiction between the 35% campaign's championing of more council housing and the arguments that you've made this evening several times for additional public money to be used to make higher and higher payments to leaseholders who are, at the end of the day, private individuals who own private assets? I know there are other considerations around that, but is there a contradiction there in the two things that you're saying?
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, the 35% campaign is run by the Elephant Amenity Network. We're not a formalised group. We set ourselves up about 10 years ago, and it was people who lived and worked around the Elephant and Castle who weren't particularly happy with how the regeneration was going. And anybody who subscribed to our three basic sort of principles of 50% affordable housing, benefits of the regeneration for all, and open master planning could come along to our regular meetings, which used to be every third Tuesday of the month. We are not holding those meetings so regularly now, but we are an intrinsic part of the Up the Elephant campaign. I'm afraid another label, with the elephant in it. Fighting around the shopping centre redevelopment. So our makeup is quite loose. We're not formalised. We have regular meetings open to anybody who subscribes to those three principles I mentioned, where people can come along and discuss what we were doing and make their own suggestions and ideas as well. On the contradiction between leaseholders' payments and paying more money for building public housing, building social housing, I don't think within the context of what we see in regenerations, there is a contradiction there. I think we think leaseholders, regardless of whether you agree with right to buy in principle, do deserve to be paid a fair compensation for their homes if they are effectively being compulsory purchased. And we believe that regenerations should be properly budgeted to allow that to happen. I don't think that necessarily takes away from having public funds being spent to build more social rented housing. Obviously, if social rented housing isn't being lost through right to buy, then we would have more of it. That is true, but I don't think individual leaseholders on estates which are marked for regeneration should be, as it were, penalised for that.
Okay, thanks for that. I've got Victor next, please.
Thank you very much to Barbara, Amir, Jerry and Jeremy for coming this evening. I think it's all been really helpful and providing your evidence. As the chair mentioned, we are collecting evidence as a committee so that we can build up a report later in the year, and your contributions will be valued. So I suppose on that vein, I want to ask the same question that I asked the cabinet member last year, so that we can contrast maybe what the experience from your community group is. So I asked the cabinet member, so please feel free to comment on this or any or part of the question, however you see fit. But my questions were, do you think we're building enough affordable housing? So I suppose you all know in your context whether or not that's the case, whether or not we're building the right sort of affordable housing. And then thirdly, what is your definition of what constitutes affordable housing?
Okay, I'll give Jerry a break. I'll take Jeremy first, and then Barbara, and then Jerry. Okay.
I'm really sorry. I do feel I do need to defer to Jerry on this. I mean, this is absolutely, core to what he campaigns on, and I do think, from my point of view,
I don't want to force you to say something, but if you had the comment, you're welcome to make it. No? Okay. Barbara, did you want to comment on that aspect, or you okay? No? Okay. So to you, Jerry. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting about Amir. Sorry. I'm sorry, Amir, because I was used to just calling 3 people. Did you want to say anything, Amir?
So I can't remember all the 3 questions. Affordable housing. What does it mean to me? I think I've seen the council's paper on housing need, and so I would say it's what the need is really, and the need in majority is people requiring on the lower levels, so social rent, that sort of level is what is needed. That would be my definition of what is affordable. I can't remember the other parts of the question. Have we delivered? We've delivered some. I think we can deliver more, and we need to look at the different mechanisms that there are available. I'm in favour of community-led housing, looking at all sorts of ways of getting more money into the delivery of social housing. So looking at social impact finance. I am looking at a scheme in SE1, which I am involved in, and we will be delivering social housing there, and that will be attracting social impact finance. So I think there's more that can be done, and I don't remember the third aspect of that question. Sorry.
Victor, do you want to just repeat it?
I suppose it's whether or not you think we're building enough affordable housing, and if we're building the right sort of affordable housing.
In terms of the sort of, I think more can be done to deliver social or genuinely affordable housing, and I think we need to also look at where it's been delivered. Yes, it's cheaper to deliver it south of the borough, but I think we need to be looking at the types of people that are being pushed out in the north of the borough, where there might be also key workers, people working in our hospitals, our police stations, our schools, who it's not viable for them to be living further and further away, because that means they have to travel more, which has a knock-on impact on productivity and lots of other things. So I think we need to be looking at that as well.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, do you want to come in now, please?
Yes, well, quite definitely. It won't be a surprise, maybe. We don't think enough affordable housing is being built. It's worth bearing in mind 35% affordable housing means almost by definition that 65% is something which you might even call unaffordable. And within that category, only a proportion is social rent, which is what Southwark really needs. Most people in Southwark who are most in need of housing depend upon social rented housing. And I think it's a real concern to us that with all the regeneration that's going on in Southwark, we still have a housing waiting list, which I think is as big as it was almost 10 years ago when the Haygate estate was being decanted, of about 13,000 households. So quite definitely not enough affordable housing. And it's not enough for the right kind of affordable housing, which is social rent. I think there should also be more family housing within those categories. I know down the Old Kent Road, the developments down there, people feel that it's family housing which isn't being delivered in the right amounts as well. So yeah, that would be my answer to that, I think.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I've got Humera next, please.
I think over the course of this evening, parts of my question have been answered in different ways. So I just want to take a step back, and can I thank the 4 of you for coming to talk this evening. Really interesting to hear those different perspectives. I'm a relatively new councillor, and I've lived in the become the Bermondsey Spa regeneration area for the last 10 years. And one of the things that has always perplexed me is how the average person can afford a home here, generally, okay? Because today I could not afford to buy my home. So no one, and other people, you know, would be lucky to even be able to buy the corner of a paving stone. I think about Bermondsey in terms of its community and its history. So actually there's a lot of people who are second, third generation, yet today, a lot of those people have left because their children cannot afford here. And we have a high level of transience simply because people cannot afford the rent, people can't afford to buy. So my question to all of you, and sorry, there's one other element is, I can't speak for sort of Labour Council leaders, but I think that there has been intentions historically to look at Southwark's ranking on the poverty list, to try and tackle some of the endemic issues from the past, and trying to build more housing. And I think someone's alluded to the number of people on the housing list now at 13,000 is actually more than it was in 2010, but it's been high for a number of years. So my question to all of you is, with all of the activity that has happened over the last, let's say, 20 years, has it been worth it? Has it actually tackled the issues that various leaders of the council of both parties have sort of laid out over the time? And most importantly, do you feel it's in any way tackled the issues in the communities that you live in? And I appreciate, and I agree fully with Jack, that it's a really multi-layered and complex sort of issue, but I just kind of want to just take a step back and look at it from the long term, because for me, looking at this particular area, it has changed dramatically. So I'm curious what your views are.
Yeah, certainly the dogs have gone, that's for certain. Jeremy, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm really happy to speak to that. I mean, I do feel that Walworth's great virtue is the fact it does it's a very, very diverse area, and there's a huge amount of council housing in the Walworth area. And I think one of the wonderful things about Walworth is that it has changed in many ways, but also it's kept its heart and soul, which is a very working class area in just south of the Elephant. And I do think that while I do think the Haygate regeneration was an enormous sort of emotional and physical disruption, but I do think lessons have been learned from that, and I do think we're starting to get the coordination that we talked about earlier. The fact that the Walworth Road is being treated as a place now, and there's things like recognizing the heritage. I know these are slightly different points, Amira, but it's all about the fact that it's being seen as a single entity and that Walworth is recognized as a place. I do feel the conservation area, the Heritage Action Zone, seeing it as a place, and the fact that it looks like investment's going to come into the buildings there, the way that the fact it's important as a place where people walk to is recognised, and the fact that if you don't have a car, it's no longer a huge, it's no longer a massive disbenefit to being able to benefit from the amenities of the area. The fact that Southwark have now, they lost the library for a long time with the fire, but that's being invested with the Southwark Heritage Centre. Another library is being built on the Aylesbury, in the plot 18. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, but it's and to be fair, Southwark wasn't ever interested in the neighbourhood plan, and people like Jerry and myself, we put a lot of time into it. But again, to be fair, our local councillors, and we'll note Councillor Seaton here, have made sure that as things have gone over time, there's been the aims and aspirations of the neighbourhood plan were worked on. So I do think seeing the intimacy of a place and trying to piece it together in a very careful way. There's been examples of that not happening in Walworth, but I think encouragingly there has been, and there are more examples of that happening in Walworth in the longer term now. So I think, yeah, that's how it's kept its sense of identity and it retains its Walworthness.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. I'll bring Amir in. Do you want to comment, Amir, please?
Yeah, just briefly. So for our area, similar to Woolworth, really, we're probably one of the oldest, or probably the oldest area of Southwark, going back to the old parishes. So the history, and again, the life and soul and everything of the area has endured. However, the physical nature of the area has changed quite massively in Borough and Bankside. And I think the issue that we find is, so our area is a lot of the time is forgotten as a place where residents don't live. People think that residents don't live in the area, whilst we have thousands and thousands of residents who do. And sometimes they are forgotten. And I think the problem with regeneration has been, in our area, should I speak to, that some of it has been beneficial and it has allowed growth in a way which is felt by all, but some of it has been in a way which is very, very corporate and very without character. And so it's become, not to target coffee shops, but other shops as well have become prolific in our area. And so if it continues, the character of the area will be lost, is our feeling. And that would make the place it would have no uniqueness. And that is one of the big concerns, I would say. And the other bit is about regeneration, going back to meeting the needs of local people. And I think that isn't always being done. And if it isn't, then people will start to be moving out. And we see that with some of the families in our area, that their children can't live in the area. And so if that continues to happen, we may not have families in the area, and then it becomes a place in the long future, a place where residents don't desire to live. And that would be problematic for the borough.
Thank you. That's a good point. Barbara, did you want to come in?
Yeah. One of the questions that is put to us regularly is, what about job creation with housing? We hear endless initiatives about improving the housing situation, but jobs just don't seem to be part of the thinking, and I can't believe that's the case. And I'd like to have a little bit more information, be able to take back to people who are asking this, where that fits in. I mean, there's going to be a big redevelopment of the Maudsley site, and it will probably be challenged considerably, because it could be argued that it's overdevelopment, really. And people just say, well, and if it is, if there's a good bit of social housing, let's hope that there are jobs to go with.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Jerry, would you like to come in?
Yes, to the question of has it all been worth it? I was struck earlier by Councillor Buck's statement that Aylesbury residents don't think that their regeneration is for them, or that it'll either not happen. The Aylesbury regeneration has been going on a long time now, many, many years. And if we are in a situation where those people who are living in it, on it, don't believe that it's going to conclude, or don't believe that what is coming is going to be for them, then I think there is, yes, a very serious problem. These regenerations now, they're not new, they're sort of middle-aged. We shouldn't, if they were successful, we wouldn't be having this discussion, I think. If they were successful, the people who did live and who have moved off the various estates that have been affected by it, Wooddean and the Haygate and the Aylesbury, they would be amongst us and they would be benefiting from it. This hasn't happened. That's undeniable. There has been improvement. As another councillor said, the amounts of affordable housing that are being delivered, or we hope will be delivered down the Old Kent Road, are at least now at the base level of 35% affordable housing. But there are a lot of concerns about the Old Kent Road as an opportunity area for still on the affordable housing side, on the family housing side, but over other issues. And I think this is a battle that still has to be won by Southwark Council. The battle of credibility. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I haven't got anybody else who's indicated that they wish to raise a question. So if we can close the item there. As I say, we've given Councillor Seaton a lot of homework to do, and hopefully he's registered everything. And I'm sure he'll come back to us at some stage with his thoughts. Okay, so I just want, besides thanking everybody that came this evening, I just wanted to just clarify on the process, because you've also generally raised questions as well as the members of the committee this evening, and this isn't a sort of one meeting exercise. It certainly wouldn't give the issue the credit and the credence it deserves. So we will be rolling this on through the rest of the municipal year, through January, February, March. So we will probably be taking, as I say, besides the transport operators, we'll probably be listening to a couple of other community representatives as well. So there will be other opportunities for us to debate similar issues, and you're welcome to sit in again if you wish, or watch it at home at your leisure once it's on the YouTube channel. So if I can thank once again Jeremy, Barbara, Amir and Jerry for coming along tonight. It's been very informative. I think you've made some very pertinent observations and comments, some of which I think the council is recognising and coming to grips with, and hopefully there's more food for thought that we can. Oh, we can see Martin smiling. Oh, we must have said the right thing. Yes, so hopefully we'll have a report by the time we get to the end of the municipal year. So thank you once again, and I'm sorry we kept you so long this evening, but any OS member will tell you this is an early meeting compared to the usual ones we have. So thank you for staying the course, and good night to you all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, members, we've got one more item on the agenda, which is item 9, the work programme. Basically, this is really just updating the work programme on the matters that we discussed before. So hopefully, I don't think it's an item for much discussion and debate. So if we could just agree that as on paper, and then we can wrap up the meeting. Is that okay? Oh, you've got your wine out, Leanne, is it already? Okay.
That's actually grape juice, Ian. It's not wine. Of course I wouldn't drink wine.
No, of course not. No, it's only for medicinal purposes, no doubt. Okay. Right. Well, thank you, members. Thank you all for coming along again this evening. And we will be getting that report back from Kieran over the council plan, as we indicated before. And our next meeting is the 12th of January. So in the interim, have a happy Christmas and New Year, and we'll meet all again on the 12th of January. Thank you very much. Good night.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.